Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab. Now let's begin. The late summer sun filtered through the windshield as Vince Lowe guided the ambulance through downtown traffic, his partner Ray Gray riding shotgun with a breakfast burrito balanced on his knee. They've been working together for 6 years now, long enough that their conversations flowed with the easy rhythm of old friends. Vince was 42, built solid from years of lifting patients and gym sessions that kept his mind clear. His dark hair showed gray at the temples, earned honestly from 12 years of emergency medicine. "So Ethan's trying out for travel soccer?" Ray asked between bites. "Yeah, kid's got his mother's determination." Vince smiled, thinking of his 9-year-old son. "Practice is 4 times a week, but he's excited about it." Claudia must be thrilled about the driving schedule. Vince's expression shifted slightly. "She's been distracted lately. Her mother's not doing well. Deborah had another fall last week." "The one in Riverside?" "Yeah, Claudia's been spending more time there. Actually, her brother moved in to help out." Ray raised an eyebrow. "I didn't know she had a brother." "Neither did I, really." "Greg. He's been living out of state for years. Construction work, I think." They weren't close. Vince shrugged. "Ethan's been spending weekends there when Claudia visits. Says his uncle's teaching him woodworking." The radio crackled before Ray could respond. "Unit 23, respond to 1847, Riverside Drive. 9-year-old male, possible injury. Caller extremely distressed." Vince reached for the radio, then froze. "That's Deborah's address." He flipped the lights and sirens, his training overriding the ice forming in his chest. Ray grabbed the dashboard as Vince accelerated, weaving through traffic with controlled precision. Neither spoke. The 7-minute drive felt like drowning. They pulled up to the neat brick house with its manicured lawn. Vince was already moving before the ambulance fully stopped, grabbing his medical bag. The front door stood open. He forced himself to breathe, to focus. Whatever this was, Ethan needed a paramedic, not a panicked father. Inside, the living room looked untouched. Doilies on the side tables, family photos on the mantel, everything in Deborah's particular order. Then he heard it, a soft, hitching breath from the hallway. Ethan sat on the hardwood floor, back against the wall, wearing a t-shirt that hung loose on his small frame. His face was pale, tear-streaked. Next to him sat a man Vince had only seen in old photographs. Tall, thin, with sandy hair and a weak chin. Greg Roberson looked up as they entered, his expression unreadable. "Dad." Ethan's voice cracked. "I'm okay, Dad." Those 4 words, delivered in that specific tone, the forced calm of a child trying to comfort an adult, sent warning signals through Vince's nervous system. He crouched down, maintaining professional distance, even as everything in him wanted to scoop his son into his arms. "Hey, buddy, I'm here. We're going to check you out." "Okay." Ray moved past Vince, setting up the equipment with practiced efficiency. He began the standard examination, vitals, pupils, checking for obvious trauma. Greg stood up, backing toward the kitchen. "He just fell," Greg said. His voice was too even, rehearsed. "Playing in the backyard. I called as soon as I found him." "Where's Claudia?" Vince asked, not looking at Greg. "She went to the pharmacy. Her mother needed prescriptions." Ray's hands moved over Ethan's arms, his neck following protocol. Then he reached to lift the back of the boy's shirt. Ethan flinched. Ray's fingers stopped. His eyes met Vince's for one sharp second, and Vince saw something there that made his blood turn to ice. "Vince," Ray said quietly. "Step back." "What?" "Step back right now." Ray's voice had no give in it. "I need you to call the police." "What are you?" Ray gripped Vince's arm hard enough to hurt. "Don't touch him. Call the police. Now." Vince's paramedic brain was still trying to process, to catalog symptoms and make assessments. But Ray's expression told him everything he needed to know about not looking. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and dialed. Then Ray shifted position, and Vince saw Ethan's back. The medical bag slipped from Vince's fingers, supplies scattering across the floor. His vision tunneled. The patterns on his son's skin weren't from a fall. They were precise, methodical, recent and old. Burns, cuts, bruises in various stages of healing, creating a topographical map of systematic torture. Someone was talking on the phone, dispatch, asking questions. Vince couldn't form words. His entire body felt like it was being pulled apart at a molecular level. Ray was talking to Ethan in a low, soothing voice, carefully not touching him, explaining that more help was coming. Vince looked up. Greg was gone. The back door stood open. Something dark and primal surged through Vince's chest. He moved toward the door, but Ray's voice cut through the red haze. Stay with your son. Vince turned back. Ethan was watching him with eyes too old, too knowing. I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't want you to find out like this. Those words, the shame in them, the misplaced guilt, shattered something fundamental in Vince's understanding of the world. He dropped to his knees beside his son, careful not to touch him, wanting desperately to hold him. You have nothing to be sorry for. Nothing. Do you understand me? Ethan nodded, but tears streamed down his face. Uncle Greg said if I told, something bad would happen to Mom. That was our secret. Vince's hands curled into fists. The sirens were getting closer, patrol cars, another ambulance. Ray was already explaining to dispatch that they needed detectives, not just uniforms. His partner was handling everything with the cool competence that made him excellent at his job, leaving Vince free to just be a father. I'm right here, Vince said. I'm not going anywhere. You're safe now. But even as he said it, even as Ethan nodded and tried to believe him, Vince knew that safe was a word that had just been redefined. His son would never be truly safe again. Not from the memories. Not from the scars that went deeper than skin. The house filled with people. Detectives. Child services. A female EMT from another unit who specialized in pediatric trauma. They were all professionals, all competent, all saying the right things. Vince watched them swarm around his son, answering their questions on autopilot, his mind fragmenting into before and after. Before he knew, after he saw, Detective Laura Wilkerson took his statement in the kitchen. She was in her 50s, gray hair pulled back, eyes that had seen too much but still held compassion. How long has your son been staying here? Weekends. For about 3 months. Since Greg moved in. And you never met Greg before? Once years ago at our wedding. Barely spoke to him. Claudia said they had a falling out when they were younger. Something about him leaving home suddenly. Laura wrote this down. We're issuing a bolo for Greg Roberson. His truck is gone. We'll find him. But her tone suggested she'd made promises like this before, and Vince heard the unspoken reality. Greg had a head start in the whole country to disappear into. Where's my wife? Vince asked. Someone needs to tell Claudia. We have officers at the pharmacy now. They'll bring her here. Laura paused. Mr. Lowe, I need to ask, were there any signs? Anything that seemed off? Vince wanted to say yes. Wanted to list all the red flags he should have seen. But there was nothing. Ethan had seemed quieter lately, less eager for their Sunday fishing trips. He complained about stomach aches that kept him home from school twice. Small things that Vince had attributed to growth, stress, normal childhood. No, he said. I didn't see anything. The guilt of those words would stay with him. They transported Ethan to County General. Vince rode in the back of the other ambulance, holding his son's hand as carefully as he would hold glass. The female paramedic, whose name tag read J. Hensley, worked with gentle efficiency, her every movement calculated to minimize trauma. Vince cataloged her technique, storing it away in case he ever had to do this for another parent's child. At the hospital, they were ushered into a private examination room. A doctor arrived, young, competent, with kind eyes that tightened when she saw Ethan's back. More questions, more photographs. A child psychologist who spoke to Ethan alone while Vince paced the hallway, every cell in his body screaming to be with his son. Claudia arrived like a tornado. She pushed past the police escort, her face a mask of panic, and Vince caught her before she could burst into the examination room. He's okay. He's talking to someone right now. What happened? They said Greg. They said something happened, but they wouldn't. She looked at Vince, really looked at him, and whatever she saw in his face made her stop. Vince, what did Greg do to our son? He told her, watched her face crumble, caught her when her knees gave out. They sank to the floor together, Claudia's sobs tearing through her chest in ways that would leave their own kind of scars. Vince held her, but part of him was already somewhere else, somewhere cold and calculating, working through logistics and possibilities. Greg Roberson had a 6-hour head start. The police would search. They would investigate. They would follow protocol and procedure and all the rules that civilized people followed. Vince was done with rules. The house felt like a crime scene, even though no crime had occurred there. Vince stood in Ethan's room, staring at the model airplanes they'd built together, the soccer trophies, the books about dinosaurs and space. Everything looked the same. Everything was different. It was 2 a.m. Ethan was sleeping in their bed, medically sedated after the third nightmare. Claudia was curled beside him, exhausted from crying. Vince had told them he needed water, but instead he'd found himself here, in this room that suddenly felt like a memorial to the childhood that had been stolen. His phone buzzed. "Ray, how is he?" "Sleeping." "Finally." "And you?" Vince didn't answer. "How is he?" "Functional. Operating. Planning." "Need anything?" "Information." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Then what kind?" "The kind that helps me find someone." A long pause. "Then, come by tomorrow. Just to talk." Vince pocketed the phone. Ray knew. After 6 years as partners, Ray understood exactly what Vince was asking and what he was willing to do about it. The question was whether Ray would help or try to stop him. The next morning, Detective Wilkerson arrived with updates. They found Greg's truck abandoned at a bus station in Arizona. Security footage showed him boarding a Greyhound to El Paso. The trail went cold from there. "We're coordinating with Texas authorities," she explained. "His face is in the system. If he surfaces, we'll know." "If," Vince repeated. "I know it's not what you want to hear, but I've been doing this 23 years. Men like Greg Roberson, they think they're smart enough to disappear. Eventually, they slip up. They use a credit card, contact someone they shouldn't, get pulled over for a taillight. We'll get him." "How long?" Laura met his eyes. "I can't answer that." "Guess." She sighed. "Could be weeks. Could be months. Could be years." Vince finished. "Could be years. We'll do everything we can." But everything they can had limits. Legal limits. Jurisdictional limits. Budget limits. Greg Roberson was now one file among thousands, and every day that passed made him harder to find. That afternoon, Vince met Ray at a diner on the south side. They sat in a back booth, coffee going cold between them. "He's in the wind," Vince said. "I know. The police are doing what they can." "I know. It's not enough." Ray leaned back. "No, it's not. I need to find him." "That's a bad idea." "I know." They sat in silence. Ray drummed his fingers on the table, a tell Vince recognized from years of watching him work through difficult decisions. "My cousin," Ray finally said, "used to be military intelligence. He's private sector now. Does background checks, surveillance, that kind of thing. Not exactly legal for all his work, but he's good. Will he help? For you?" "Yeah." "But Vince," Ray leaned forward. "Whatever you're planning, think it through. You have a son who needs his father. Don't do something that puts you in prison." "Greg tortured my son for months. In my mother-in-law's house. While I was working 12-hour shifts saving other people's kids." Vince's voice stayed level, but his hands shook. "He burned him. Cut him. Made him too afraid to tell anyone. And now he's going to disappear into the woodwork, and maybe someday the police will get lucky." "So what's your plan?" "Find him and beat him to death." "I don't know yet." That was the truth. The rage inside Vince wanted simple violence, wanted to feel Greg's bones break under his hands. But violence wasn't justice. It wasn't enough. Greg needed to understand, truly understand, what he'd done. He needed to feel the fear Ethan had felt, the helplessness, the betrayal. "Give me the contact information," Vince said. Ray slid a business card across the table. "Lou Jacobs. Tell him I sent you." "But Vince, be smart about this." Over the next week, Vince fell into a routine. Days were for Ethan, therapy appointments, gentle conversations, rebuilding trust. The psychologist, Dr. Stacy Hanna, was excellent. She worked with Ethan using art therapy and play techniques, slowly helping him process the trauma. She also met with Vince and Claudia, preparing them for the long road ahead. "Children are resilient," Dr. Hanna said, "but they need consistency and safety. Ethan will heal, but it takes time." Nights were different. Once Ethan slept, Vince retreated to the garage where he'd set up a laptop. Lou Jacobs had taken the case, and information began trickling in. Greg Roberson was 45. He'd bounced between construction jobs for 20 years, never staying anywhere long. No permanent address, no credit cards, no social media presence. He was a ghost by design, which suggested this wasn't his first time running. But everyone had a past, and Lou was good at excavation. Your brother-in-law has a juvie record that got sealed, Lou explained over the phone. I'm working on getting details, but I found something interesting. He was living in Oregon 8 years ago, worked for a school district doing maintenance. And he quit suddenly right before the police opened an investigation into allegations made by a student. No charges were filed. The family moved away before it went anywhere. Vince's grip on the phone tightened. How many others? Hard to say, but I'm finding patterns. Omaha, Tulsa, Sacramento. He'd show up, work 6 months to a year, then disappear. Always around schools or youth centers. Always leaving just ahead of trouble. Greg wasn't an opportunist. He was a predator who'd been hunting for decades. Ethan wasn't the first. He was just the most recent. Can you find him? Vince asked. Working on it. He's careful, but careful people have habits. Everyone does. I'll find his. While Lou worked the official angles, Vince worked another. He reached out to Deborah, Claudia's mother. She was destroyed by guilt, barely able to look at them. But Vince needed information. They met at her house, the scene now, cleared by police. Vince walked through rooms that looked ordinary, trying to imagine what Ethan had experienced here. I didn't know, Deborah kept saying. I swear I didn't know. Tell me about Greg. When did he contact you? March. Called out of nowhere. Said he wanted to reconnect. I was so happy. My own son after all these years. She twisted a tissue in her hands. He said he'd had a hard life, made mistakes, but he wanted family again. Wanted to help. Why did he leave originally? Deborah's face shuddered. There was an incident with a neighbor's daughter. She said Greg did something inappropriate. He denied it. My husband and I believed him, but the rumors, it was easier for him to go. He did it, didn't he? I don't know. I wanted to believe my son, but she'd known. On some level, she'd known. Just like Vince should have known. The guilt connected them. Did he mention anything about where he might go? Any friends? Old contacts? No. He kept to himself mostly. Watched a lot of TV, worked on his truck. She paused. Wait. He got a call once. Argued with someone about a job in Colorado. Said something about mountains and mining work. It wasn't much, but Vince passed it to Lou. 2 weeks after the discovery, the legal system ground into motion. The DA's office wanted to prosecute, but they needed Greg in custody. They obtained warrants, put out alerts, filed charges. Child abuse, assault, torture. The list went on. Even if he's convicted on everything, he's looking at 20 years maximum. The DA explained to Vince and Claudia. With good behavior, he could be out in 12. That's not enough, Vince said. It's what the law allows. 12 years. Greg would be 57, still young enough to hurt someone else's child. Still young enough to enjoy a life he didn't deserve. The law wasn't enough. The system wasn't enough. Nothing in the civilized world of judges and lawyers and rehabilitation programs would ever be enough for what Greg had done. At night, Vince researched. He learned about untraceable methods, anonymous contacts, how to hire people who existed in shadows. He had money saved, enough to finance options he'd never considered before. But every option fell hollow. Hiring someone to hurt Greg, even to kill him, wouldn't satisfy the need burning in Vince's chest. This had to be personal. It had to be precise. Greg needed to know exactly who was destroying him and why. Lou called on a Tuesday. I found him. Vince's heart stopped. Where? Small town in Colorado. Silverton. Population 800. He's working cash jobs at a mine restoration site. Using the name Gary Royce. Got flagged because he applied for a library card. Uses them for computer access, and the age on his fake ID didn't match his face. Librarian was former TSA, noticed the discrepancy, ran it up the chain. You're sure it's him? Sent a guy to verify. It's him, living in a trailer park on the edge of town, keeps his head down. Been there 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Greg had been living free while Ethan woke up screaming every night. Have you told the police? Lou paused. Not yet. Wanted to check with you first. Give me 24 hours. Vince, 24 hours. Then call it in. But I need a head start. Another pause. You're a good man. Don't do something that changes that. But Vince had already changed. The moment he'd seen his son's back, something fundamental had shifted. The civilized veneer had cracked, revealing something older underneath. Something primitive and absolute. He told Claudia he had to work a double shift. She was too exhausted to question it, too focused on Ethan's needs. He packed a bag with clothes, cash, and equipment. No credit cards. No traceable communication. Before he left, he stood in Ethan's doorway. His son slept fitfully, clutching a stuffed bear Vince had won him at a carnival years ago. Ethan looked so small in the bed, so fragile. The nightlight cast shadows that made Vince think of other shadows, darker ones, in a house in Riverside. I'm going to fix this, Vince whispered. I promise. Then he walked out into the night, leaving behind the man who saved lives and embracing the one who would take them. The drive to Silverton took 14 hours. Vince stopped only for gas, paying cash at stations without cameras. He'd swapped his plates for stolen ones in a parking garage, another crime to add to the list he was compiling. Each illegal act felt like shedding skin, revealing something harder underneath. Silverton was a mining town gone tourist trap, nestled in the San Juan Mountains. The off-season meant empty streets and shuttered shops. Perfect for someone trying to disappear. Perfect for someone trying to find them. Vince rented a room at a motel under a false name, then drove to the trailer park Lou had identified. It sat on the outskirts of town, a collection of rusted mobile homes and broken dreams. Greg's trailer was number 17, a faded blue rectangle with a truck parked outside. The same truck that had been abandoned in Arizona. Greg hadn't even bothered to ditch it, probably figured it wouldn't be tracked this far north. Arrogant. Stupid. Both. Vince sat in his car, 3 lots down, watching. Lights were on inside. Through a gap in the curtains, he could see movement. Greg was home. Probably thought he was safe. Probably imagined he'd gotten away with it. The rage that had been cold and calculated suddenly flared hot. Vince's hand moved toward the door handle. He could be inside in 30 seconds. Could have Greg on the ground in 45. Could make him hurt. No. He forced himself to breathe, to think. Ray's words echoed. Be smart about this. Violence was easy. Violence was quick. But Greg deserved more than a beating. He deserved to experience the same fear he'd inflicted. The same helplessness. And Vince needed to do it in a way that wouldn't put him in prison, away from Ethan. He drove back to the motel and spent the night planning. By morning, he had a framework. It required patience, precision, and a willingness to cross lines he'd never imagined crossing. But every time doubt crept in, he pictured Ethan's back, the scars, the terror in his son's eyes. Doubt vanished. Vince spent the next 2 days learning Greg's patterns. Wake at 6 a.m. Coffee at the local diner. Drive to the mine restoration site. Work until 5 p.m. Grocery store. Home. Repeat. Greg didn't socialize, didn't go to bars, didn't make himself memorable. Smart behavior for someone hiding. But everyone had vulnerabilities. On the 3rd day, Vince followed Greg to the grocery store. Watched him buy the same items. Frozen dinners, beer, chips, cigarettes. Watched him interact with the cashier. Curt, dismissive, the behavior of someone who didn't want to be remembered. Then Vince noticed something. As Greg walked to his truck, he favored his left leg. A limp, barely noticeable, but there. Professional observation kicked in. Old injury, probably knee or hip, aggravated by the physical labor at the mine. Pain. Greg lived with chronic pain. Vince smiled for the first time in weeks. That night, he broke into Greg's trailer while Greg was at the diner. Simple lock, no alarm. Inside, the trailer smelled like cigarettes and desperation. Vince moved quickly, photographing everything. The mattress on the floor, the stolen laptop, the collection of flash drives stacked in a drawer. He didn't take the flash drives. Didn't want to know what was on them. The police could find that particular nightmare. But he did something else. He found Greg's medication, prescription painkillers for that bad leg, probably obtained illegally. Vince was a paramedic. He knew drugs, knew interactions, knew exactly how to weaponize medicine. He worked for 20 minutes, precise and methodical. When he left, everything looked untouched. Greg came home at 8 p.m., limped inside, none the wiser. The next morning, Vince called Lou, make the anonymous tip. Tell the police where Greg is. But give them wrong information first. Say he's in Durango. That'll buy time. What are you doing, Vince? Making sure he doesn't run again. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Lou sighed. The call goes out in 1 hour. Whatever you're doing, finish it. Vince hung up and drove to the mine site. He wore a baseball cap, kept his head down, and approached the foreman. Looking for day work. Heard you might need hands. The foreman, a weathered man named Curtis Baker, looked him over. Know anything about restoration? Enough. I'm strong, show up on time, and don't ask questions. You got a problem with the law? Just need the cash. Curtis nodded. $50 a day cash. Be here at 7 tomorrow. Vince spent the day working alongside Greg, who didn't recognize him. Why would he? Greg had barely glanced at Vince at the wedding years ago, and now Vince wore a beard he'd been growing for weeks, different clothes, different posture. He was just another desperate guy looking for work. But Vince watched Greg, watched him struggle with the physical labor, the way he winced when he bent down, the way he dry-swallowed pills at lunch. Watched him interact with the other workers, cold, isolated, careful not to draw attention. At 3 p.m., Greg's phone rang. Vince was close enough to hear the panic in Greg's voice as he stepped away, someone on the other end giving him information that made his face drain of color. The Durango tip had gone out. Police were looking. Greg hung up and immediately packed his tools. Told Curtis he was done. Family emergency. Got in his truck and drove back to the trailer park, moving faster than his bad leg wanted. Vince followed at a distance. Greg threw his few possessions into garbage bags, moving with frantic energy. The trailer door hung open. Vince watched from the woods behind the park as Greg loaded his truck, preparing to run again. Then Greg stopped, grabbed his knee, face twisting in pain. The chronic pain that had been building all day, aggravated by stress and labor. He limped back inside, presumably for his medication. Vince counted to 60. Then he walked across the lot to Greg's trailer and stepped inside. Greg stood at the kitchen counter, pill bottle open, glass of water in hand. He looked up and for a moment didn't register the stranger in his doorway. Then he did. Recognition came slowly. The set of the jaw, the eyes, something familiar breaking through the beard and the rage. Vince, Greg whispered. Hello, Greg. Greg's hand moved toward the counter, toward a knife sitting by the sink. Vince closed the distance in 3 steps and slammed Greg's hand down, bone cracking against laminate. Greg screamed. The knife clattered to the floor. You don't get weapons, Vince said. You don't get to fight back. You don't get anything. Greg tried to pull away, but Vince grabbed his collar and threw him against the wall. Not hard enough to cause serious damage. Just hard enough to remind Greg what helplessness felt like. Please, Greg gasped. I'm sorry. I'm sick. I need help. You told my son the same thing. That you were sick and couldn't control yourself. That it was his fault for being too trusting. I didn't mean. Shut up. Vince's voice cut like steel. You have exactly 1 chance to live through this. You're going to sit down, and you're going to listen. Greg slid down the wall, cradling his injured hand. Blood dripped from his split lip. He looked pathetic, broken, nothing like the monster who'd haunted Vince's nightmares. That made it easier. The police are coming, Vince said. They know you're in Silverton. They'll be here in a few hours. You're going to be arrested, charged, and convicted. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison. No, I can't. Yes, you can, and you will. But I wanted you to understand something first. Vince crouched down, getting eye level. You torture my son. You made him afraid to sleep, afraid to tell anyone, afraid that you'd hurt his mother if he talked. You took every ounce of innocence he had, and you destroyed it. Tears streamed down Greg's face. I'm sorry. I have a problem. I try to stop. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught. Vince reached into his pocket and pulled out a photo of Ethan's back. Forced Greg to look at it. This is what you did. Every burn, every cut, every bruise. Look at it. Greg turned his head away. Vince grabbed his jaw and forced him to look. This is my son. He's 9 years old. He liked dinosaurs and soccer and telling bad jokes. Now he wakes up screaming. Now he flinches when people touch him. Now he has to go to therapy 3 times a week to learn how to feel safe again. I'm sorry, Greg sobbed. No, you're not. But you will be. Vince stood up. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sit here and wait for the police. You're not going to run. Because if you run, I'll find you again. And next time, I won't be so gentle. What did you do to me? Vince smiled. Your pain medication. The pills you take 4 times a day for that bad leg. I replaced them with something else. Something that will metabolize over the next few weeks and show up on every drug test the prison gives you. Something that will flag you as a high-risk inmate and make sure you end up in the worst possible facility. It was a lie. Vince hadn't actually tampered with the medication. That would have been too risky, too traceable. But Greg didn't know that. Greg was a coward who'd hurt children because they couldn't fight back. He'd believe anything that fed his fear. You also have those flash drives in your drawer, Vince continued. The police will find them. Whatever's on them. And I'm guessing it's worse than what you did to Ethan. That's additional charges. Additional years. Greg's face crumpled. Please, just kill me. No, death is too easy. You're going to live a very long time, Greg. In a place where people know exactly what you did. Where child abusers get special treatment from the other inmates. Where every day you'll understand what it's like to be helpless and afraid. Vince walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and one more thing. I'm friends with a lot of people in the medical field, including some who work in prison healthcare. If you ever try to hurt yourself, if you ever try to take the easy way out, they'll save you. They'll patch you up and send you right back. You don't get to escape this. Another lie, but a necessary one. Why? Greg whispered. Why not just kill me? Because killing you would mean I become something I'm not. And I have a son who needs me to stay who I am. But making sure you face justice, making sure you spend every remaining day of your life paying for what you did, that's not murder. That's just being a good father. Vince left the trailer and walked into the Colorado evening. His hands were shaking, adrenaline crashing through his system. But he felt something he hadn't felt in weeks, a sense of completion. He drove to a payphone 2 towns over and called Lou. The tip can be accurate now. He's at the trailer park in Silverton, Unit 17. He'll be there when they arrive. How do you know? Because he's too afraid to run. Did you hurt him? Not in any way that matters. Vince hung up and drove through the night, heading home to his family. Behind him, Greg Roberson sat alone in his trailer, waiting for the inevitable knock on the door, paralyzed by fear and the belief that he'd been poisoned with something that would make his already miserable life infinitely worse. The next morning, Detective Wilkerson called. We got him. Silverton PD picked him up 2 hours ago. He was practically catatonic, kept muttering about being poisoned. We're running tests, but we think it's just paranoia. That's good news. Vince, were you in Colorado this week? No. What? A long pause. No reason. Just asking. Anyway, we found evidence in his trailer. Lots of evidence. He's not getting out this time. How long? With what we found. 40 years minimum. He'll die in prison. 40 years. Not enough. But more than the 12 they'd originally promised. Thank you, Laura. Thank you for trusting the system. But Vince hadn't trusted the system. He just made sure the system had what it needed to work. When he got home, Ethan was in the backyard with Claudia, carefully kicking a soccer ball back and forth. His movements were tentative, uncertain, but he was trying. When he saw Vince, his face lit up. Dad, you're home. Vince scooped him up carefully, mindful of injuries still healing. I'm home, buddy. I'm not going anywhere. Promise. Promise. That night, after Ethan fell asleep between them in bed, Claudia looked at Vince in the darkness. The police called. They said Greg was terrified when they found him. Kept saying someone was going to kill him in prison. Good, Vince said. Did you? I made sure he knew he was caught. That's all. Claudia was quiet for a long moment. Thank you. For what? For not doing something that would take you away from us. For staying who you are. But Vince knew the truth. He had changed. The man who'd responded to that 911 call 3 weeks ago no longer existed. In his place was someone harder, someone capable of calculated cruelty in the name of protection. Maybe that made him a monster. Maybe it made him a father. Maybe it made him both. Ethan stirred between them, and Vince put his hand on his son's shoulder, feeling the warmth of his skin, the steady rise and fall of his breath. Whatever he'd become, whatever lines he'd crossed, it had been worth it. Greg Roberson would spend the rest of his life in fear, alone, paying for what he'd done. And Vince could finally sleep. 3 months later, Vince sat in Dr. Hannah's office for a family session. Ethan had made remarkable progress. He still had nightmares, still struggled with trust, but he was laughing again, playing again, starting to believe that the world could be safe. "He's doing well," Dr. Hannah said. "Better than I expected, honestly. You've given him exactly what he needed. Consistency, patience, and absolute certainty that he's protected." "He is protected," Vince said. "Always." After the session, they went for ice cream. Ethan got chocolate with sprinkles, and they sat at a picnic table watching people walk by. "Dad," Ethan said quietly. "Yeah. Is Uncle Greg ever going to hurt me again?" "No." "How would you know?" Vince looked at his son. "Because I made sure of it. And because I'll always make sure of it. That's my job. That's what fathers do." Ethan nodded, satisfied. He went back to his ice cream, a 9-year-old boy trying to be a kid again. Vince's phone buzzed. A text from Ray. "Coffee tomorrow?" "Sure." They met at their usual diner. Ray slid a newspaper across the table. The headline read, "Colorado man sentenced to 45 years in child abuse case." "He got an extra 5 years, Ray said. Turns out those flash drives had evidence of 6 other victims. 3 states. 15 years of abuse. Vince read the article. Greg had been convicted on 12 counts. The judge had called him a predator of the worst kind and ensured he'd never see freedom again. "You did good," Ray said. "I didn't do anything. The system worked." "Sure. And you didn't happen to be in Colorado when he was found." "I worked a double shift that week. You can check the logs." Ray smiled slightly. "Already did. Funny thing, though. I could have sworn I saw your car in the parking garage with stolen plates. But when I went to report it, the plates were back to normal. Must have been mistaken. Must have been." They drank their coffee in comfortable silence. Finally, Ray spoke. "However it happened, I'm glad it's over. Glad that bastard is where he belongs." "Me too." "And Ethan, getting stronger every day." "Good. That's what matters." They left it at that. Some truths didn't need to be spoken aloud. As Vince drove home, he thought about justice. Real justice, not the theoretical kind they taught in schools and courtrooms. Real justice was messy. It required sacrifice. It required people willing to stand in the dark places so others could stay in the light. He'd stood in that darkness, had looked into it and let it look back, and he'd walked away still recognizing himself in the mirror. That was enough. When he got home, Ethan was building a new model airplane at the kitchen table. Claudia was making dinner. The house smelled like garlic and tomatoes. Normal. Safe. Home. "Hey, Dad, look." Ethan held up the half-finished plane. "It's a fighter jet. You said we could paint it red, right?" "Any color you want, buddy." Ethan grinned and went back to work. Vince watched him for a moment, this resilient kid who'd survived something that would have destroyed most adults. Watched him carefully gluing pieces together, building something new from the instructions. Maybe that's what they were all doing. Building something new. The scars would always be there. Invisible roadmaps of trauma that couldn't be erased. But scars were proof of survival. Proof that something had tried to break you and failed. Later that night, after Ethan had gone to bed in his own room, a milestone celebrated with quiet pride, Vince stood in the backyard looking at the stars. Somewhere in Colorado, Greg Roberson was locked in a cell, probably still paranoid about phantom poisons, certainly terrified about spending the next 4 decades surrounded by men who'd heard what he'd done. "Good. Vince." Claudia's voice came from the doorway. "You okay?" "Yeah, just thinking." She joined him, taking his hand. About how sometimes the right thing and the legal thing aren't the same, and how you have to choose which one you can live with." She squeezed his hand. "Did you make the right choice?" "Yes. I believe you." They stood together under the stars, 2 parents who'd walked through hell and somehow made it out the other side. Scarred. Changed, but together. And somewhere inside, in a room decorated with model airplanes and soccer trophies, a 9-year-old boy slept peacefully for the first time in months, dreaming of red fighter jets and a father who'd moved mountains to keep him safe. The story could have ended differently. Vince could have killed Greg in that trailer, could have given in to the rage and become exactly what he hunted. But he'd chosen a harder path, one that required restraint, intelligence, and the willingness to work in shadows without losing himself completely. It wasn't perfect justice. There was no such thing, but it was enough. And for Ethan, for Claudia, for the family they were rebuilding piece by careful piece, enough was everything. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Illusion. Dominic Veritas knew 3 things for certain. His construction company was thriving, his Scotch collection was unmatched in Portland, and his marriage of 8 years was rock solid. At 42, he had built everything from nothing. The mansion in West Hills, the fleet of luxury cars, and a reputation that commanded respect throughout Oregon's business community. The December air hung cold as Dom pulled his Audi into the driveway. Snow was forecast for the weekend, perfect for their annual Christmas tree decorating tradition. His 6-year-old son Liam would be bouncing off the walls, probably already pestering Audrey about when they could start hanging ornaments. Dom checked his watch, 7:30 p.m. He was early for once. The last 5 months had been a marathon of 18-hour days, finalizing the riverfront development project that would cement his legacy. His absence at home hadn't gone unnoticed, but Audrey had been understanding. Too understanding, perhaps. Inside, the house smelled of cinnamon and pine. Their 14-foot Fraser fir dominated the living room, still naked save for the pre-strung lights Audrey had wrapped around it that afternoon. "Daddy!" Liam crashed into Dom's legs, small arms wrapping around his knees. "You're home. Mom said you wouldn't be back until bedtime." Dom ruffled his son's copper hair, so like Audrey's. "Surprise, buddy. Couldn't miss tree night, could I?" Audrey appeared in the doorway to the kitchen, wine glass in hand. For a split second, Dom caught something flicker across her face. Surprise? Disappointment? Before it morphed into a smile. "You're early," she said, crossing the room to kiss his cheek. "I was just about to feed Liam dinner. I'll take over. Why don't you relax? You've been with a monster all day." Dom winked at his son, who giggled in response. Later, after dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets and stories, Dom tucked Liam in a bed. The boy's eyelids drooped, but he fought sleep with the determination only a 6-year-old could muster. "Dad, are you going to be gone again tomorrow?" Dom felt a familiar stab of guilt. "Not tomorrow, buddy. Tomorrow's Saturday. We're going to decorate the tree, remember?" "Good." Liam yawned. "Mom cries when you're not here." Dom froze. "She does. At night. I hear her on the phone sometimes." Dom kept his voice casual. "On the phone? With who?" "Dunno." Liam's eyes finally closed. "She calls him V." Dom sat motionless beside his son's bed long after the boy's breathing had steadied into sleep. He tried to rationalize. V could be anyone. Vivian, her friend from spin class. Or Victor, her brother in Seattle. But brothers didn't make wives cry at night, and friends didn't necessitate whispered phone calls after dark. When he finally descended the stairs, Audrey was curled on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, smiling. "Is he asleep?" Out like a light, Dom poured himself 3 fingers of scotch. "So how was your day?" "The usual. Took Liam to school, had coffee with Taylor, picked up groceries." She set her phone down. "Oh, and I invited my parents for Christmas dinner. I hope that's okay." The casual way she mentioned Taylor, her maid of honor and supposed best friend, made Dom's suspicions seem absurd. Taylor was happily married to a pediatric surgeon named Richard. They'd had dinner together just last month. "Of course. Your dad's still drinking my bourbon." Audrey laughed. "You know it." They fell into easy conversation, and Dom allowed himself to relax. The comment about V was probably nothing, a child's misunderstanding or imagination. Later that night, Dom woke to an empty bed. The clock read 2:17 a.m. He found Audrey in the kitchen, her back to the door, phone pressed her ear. Tomorrow, he'll be with Liam all day. Yes, I miss you too. Her voice was a whisper, but in the silent house, it carried. Soon, V. I promise. Dom retreated silently up the stairs, his mind racing. He didn't confront her, not yet. Dominic Veritas didn't act on impulse or emotion. He gathered facts, planned meticulously, and struck decisively. Someone was about to learn why his rivals feared him. And if that someone was his own wife, so be it. Chapter 2. The Frayed Edges. The morning broke with pristine sunshine reflecting off fresh snow. A perfect Saturday for family traditions. Dom had slept little, his mind calculating possibilities and strategies. By dawn, he had formulated the beginnings of a plan. Daddy, it's tree day. Liam bounced on their bed at 7 a.m. sharp, oblivious to the tension that had settled in his father's shoulders. Audrey groaned and pulled a pillow over her head. Liam, indoor voice, please. Dom scooped up his son. Let's let Mom sleep in. How about you help me make breakfast? In the kitchen, Dom made chocolate chip pancakes while discreetly examining Audrey's phone, which she'd left charging on the counter. Nothing suspicious in her text messages or call log. Whoever V was, she was being careful. Can we wake Mom now? Liam asked, syrup coating his chin. Sure, buddy. Go get her. While Liam thundered up the stairs, Dom logged into their family cell account on his laptop. The previous night's call had been to a number with no contact name, and it appeared regularly in her log for the past 4 months. Always late at night. Always for 20 minutes or more. He memorized the number just as Audrey appeared, tousled and yawning, with Liam dragging her by the hand. Pancakes. What's the occasion? She kissed the top of Liam's head. Tree day, Liam exclaimed, as if it were obvious. Breakfast passed with forced normalcy as Dom played the role of attentive husband while his mind processed the betrayal. For months of late-night calls while he worked himself to exhaustion providing for them. After breakfast, they moved to the living room to begin decorating. The massive tree dominated the space, its branches still bare except for the pre-strung lights Audrey had wrapped around it the previous day. I think the lights need to be plugged in first to make sure they all work, Dom suggested, looking for the cord. Audrey handed him a string of lights from a box. Plug these in, hon. What happened next would forever be etched in Dom's memory. Liam lunged forward, panic in his eyes, and yanked the plug from Dom's hand. No, Daddy, the wires are cut. Look, his small finger pointed to frayed copper near the plug. Mommy was scraping them with a knife in the kitchen. She told Grandma this will be his last Christmas. She's watching you, Dad. Don't touch it. The room froze. Audrey's face drained of color, her eyes darting between Liam and Dom. Liam, Audrey's voice was sharp. What are you talking about? I was fixing the lights, not. Don't lie, Mom. I saw you. With a knife. Dom maintained perfect composure, even as ice flooded his veins. He knelt to Liam's level. Buddy, I need you to be very specific. When did you see Mom with these lights? Yesterday, when you were at work. She was in the kitchen with the knife and the lights. His lower lip trembled. She was on the phone with Grandma, saying it would be your last Christmas. Dom's eyes met Audrey's. Her face had shifted from shock to something calculating. Liam has such an imagination, she said with a nervous laugh. I was trimming the frayed ends with scissors, not a knife. And I was telling Mom this would be our last Christmas in this house if your development goes through. Remember? We talked about moving closer to downtown. It was a plausible explanation. Too plausible, too quick. Dom examined the plug. The copper wires were indeed exposed, with clean, deliberate cuts that would have created a dangerous short circuit when plugged in. This wasn't wear and tear. This was intentional. Liam, go to your room for a bit. I need to talk to Mom. But the tree... We'll finish it soon. I promise. Once Liam was upstairs, Dom faced his wife. Explain. Audrey's hands fluttered nervously. Dom, you can't possibly think. These lights are old. The wiring frays. I was trying to fix them. With a kitchen knife? Instead of simply buying new ones? We're not exactly struggling financially, Audrey. You're overreacting. It's a misunderstanding. Dom held her gaze without blinking. Who's V? Her composure cracked briefly before she recovered. V? I don't know what you're talking about. The person you call at night when you think I'm asleep. The person you were speaking to at 2 a.m. last night. Audrey's eyes narrowed slightly. You're spying on me now? Answer the question. It's Victoria, my therapist. Therapists don't take calls at 2 a.m., Audrey. Try again. She folded her arms. I don't have to explain my friendships to you. You've been absent for months, Dom. Did it ever occur to you that I might need someone to talk to? The deflection was textbook. Dom recognized it from countless business negotiations when cornered attack. He decided to retreat strategically. We're done decorating for today. I'm taking Liam to the Children's Museum. Dom. And I'm throwing these lights away. He gathered the damaged string. Unless you'd prefer I send them to a lab for analysis? Fear flickered across her features. Don't be ridiculous. As Dom climbed the stairs to get Liam, his mind was already several moves ahead. Audrey was planning something with this mysterious V, something that potentially involved Dom's death. The frayed wires were either a botched attempt or a warning shot. Either way, the game had begun, and Dominic Veritas never lost. Chapter 3. The Invisible Threads. The Children's Museum buzzed with weekend activity, providing the perfect cover for Dom's first counter move. While Liam explored the dinosaur exhibit, Dom made 2 calls from a burner phone purchased at a gas station on the way. The first was to Tobias Wolf, his head of security at Veritas Construction. Ex-military and pathologically loyal, Tobias had handled delicate situations for Dom in the past. I need surveillance on my wife. Discreet, continuous, starting today. And I need a trace on this number. Dom recited the mysterious phone number from memory. Consider it done. Tobias replied without questions. Timeline. Indefinite. And Tobias? This stays between us. The second call was to his attorney, Nora Blackwell. Nora, I need you to draft separation papers and secure my assets. Freeze joint accounts except for the household expense account. He lowered his voice as Liam waved from inside a mock dinosaur dig. And I need records of my life insurance policies. Dom, what's happening? Nora's concern was evident. Insurance. In every sense of the word. By evening, when they returned home, Dom had compartmentalized his rage and suspicion beneath a veneer of normalcy. He had always excelled at strategic patience. Audrey had decorated the tree in their absence. A peace offering, perhaps, or simply maintaining appearances. She'd ordered Liam's favorite pizza and was overly attentive throughout dinner. I'm sorry about this morning, she said after Liam had gone to bed. I've been stressed with the holidays coming. Let me make it up to you. Her hand slid suggestively along his thigh. Dom recognized the manipulation, but played along. Physical intimacy might lower her guard, reveal something useful. Afterward, he pretended to sleep while Audrey slipped out of bed around midnight, taking her phone. The next morning, Sunday, Tobias sent his first report. The phone number belonged to Victor Harlow, 39, an art dealer who had opened a gallery in Portland's Pearl District 6 months ago. He lived in a luxury apartment 3 blocks from Audrey's favorite coffee shop. A quick social media search revealed Victor Harlow was devastatingly handsome, cultured, and, most tellingly, had been photographed at the charity gala Dom had skipped in October due to work commitments. In the background of one photo, Dom spotted Audrey in her red Valentino dress, looking in Harlow's direction. The pieces were falling into place. Monday morning, Dom left for work as usual, but detoured to meet Tobias in person. She visited him yesterday, Tobias reported, sliding an envelope across the table. While you were at the museum with your son. They appear intimate. The photos inside confirmed what Dom already knew. Audrey in Harlow's arms, their kiss passionate and familiar, the embrace of established lovers, not a new infatuation. There's more, Tobias continued. Harlow has a record. Nothing major, fraud charges that were dropped in California 3 years ago. But he's burned through 3 wealthy women in the last 5 years. Moves to their city, establishes himself, begins a relationship, then somehow ends up with substantial assets before disappearing. A con man, Dom said flatly. a sophisticated one. His gallery is legitimate but struggling. His apartment is rented under a corporate name, and he's carrying significant debt. Dom absorbed this information with cold calculation. And my life insurance? $3 million, plus the business valuation of roughly $20 million. Your wife is the sole beneficiary. The picture was now crystal clear. Audrey and her lover weren't just having an affair. They were planning to kill Dom for his money. The Christmas lights had been the first attempt, likely botched by Liam's unexpected presence in the kitchen. Keep watching them, Dom instructed. I want to know everything. Where they meet, what they discuss, every move they make. What's your play here, boss? Tobias asked. Law enforcement? Dom's smile was devoid of warmth. No, this requires a more permanent solution. That evening, while reviewing architectural plans in his home office, Dom received a text from the surveillance team. Audrey had just entered Harlow's building. As if on cue, his phone rang. Audrey. Hey babe, I'm gonna be late. Taylor's having a crisis with Richard. Girl, emergency. The lie flowed effortlessly from her lips. Dom marveled at her composure. Take your time, he replied smoothly. Liam and I will manage dinner. After hanging up, Dom turned to find Liam standing in the doorway of his office, small face troubled. Dad? Is Mom okay? Dom gestured for his son to come closer. Why do you ask, buddy? She's been acting weird. Like she's scared of something. Dom considered his words carefully. Your mom has some things she's working through. But I need you to tell me something important, Liam. That day with the Christmas lights, did Mom really say last Christmas to Grandma? Liam nodded solemnly. She said, if everything goes according to plan, this will be his last Christmas. I thought she meant Santa was going to die. The innocent interpretation almost made Dom smile. Almost. And have you seen Mom doing anything else unusual? Meeting with people I don't know. Liam's eyes widened. The man with the funny accent. He came to the house once when you were away. Do you remember his name? No, but Mom called him her special friend and said I couldn't tell you about him. Dom ruffled his son's hair, concealing his fury. Thank you for being honest with me, Liam. That's what brave boys do. After putting Liam to bed, Dom sat alone in his darkened office, the skeletal Christmas tree visible through the doorway. Its lights, new, safe ones he'd purchased, twinkled mockingly. His phone buzzed with another update from Tobias. She's left his apartment. Headed home. Approximately 20 minutes. Dom poured himself 2 fingers of scotch and contemplated the chessboard his life had become. Audrey and Harlow thought they were the players, but they'd fatally misunderstood who they were dealing with. In the construction business, Dom had faced down corrupt officials, violent union bosses, and ruthless competitors. He hadn't built his empire by surrendering when threatened. He'd done it by eliminating threats so thoroughly that no one dared cross him again. Audrey and her lover had made their opening move with those frayed Christmas lights. Now was Dom's turn, and Dominic Veritas played to win. Chapter 4. The Elaborate Trap. For the next 2 weeks, Dom executed the first phase of his strategy, surveillance and intelligence gathering. He became the perfect husband, attentive, loving, completely unsuspecting. He worked regular hours, brought home flowers, and even suggested a romantic weekend getaway after Christmas. Meanwhile, Tobias's team documented every meeting between Audrey and Victor Harlow. They placed discreet listening devices in Harlow's apartment and gallery, capturing conversations that turned Dom's blood to ice. We need to try again, Harlow had told Audrey during one meeting. The lights were too obvious. Something untraceable this time. His food, Audrey had suggested. He takes supplements every morning. I could gradually increase the dosage. They were discussing poison, a slower, more methodical approach than electrocution. Dom adjusted his schedule, pretending to take his supplements while actually disposing of them. He began subtly documenting his symptoms, mentioned headaches to colleagues, canceled a lunch due to stomach issues, even stumbled slightly when walking with Audrey one evening. The performance had the desired effect. The surveillance team reported Audrey's excited call to Harlow. It's working. He's showing symptoms. On December 23rd, Dom initiated Phase 2 division. He called Audrey's parents and, with carefully crafted concern, mentioned her emotional difficulties and concerning behavior. He described finding prescription bottles she'd hidden, suggested she might be struggling with the holiday season. She's been so distant, he told her mother with believable worry. I'm concerned about her stability around Liam. The seeds of doubt successfully planted. Dom then approached Liam's school counselor with similar concerns, creating a paper trail that would later prove invaluable. That evening, he suggested they host a Christmas Eve dinner the following night. Nothing fancy, just your parents, my sister, maybe a couple of friends. He watched Audrey's reaction closely. Tomorrow? That's so last minute, Dom. Her protest was immediate. I thought it would be nice. Family tradition and all that. He shrugged casually. I'll handle everything if you're too busy. Audrey hesitated, visibly calculating. Let me check if my parents are available. Great. And I was thinking of inviting someone from work, Tobias and his wife. You've met them at company events. Dom kept his tone light. Oh, and why don't you invite your friend from the gallery? The one who helped you pick out that painting for the dining room. Her face paled. What friend? The art dealer. Victor something? You mentioned him a few weeks ago. The trap was set. If she refused to invite Harlow, it would seem suspicious. If she agreed, Dom would have them both in his controlled environment. I don't really know him that well, Audrey stammered. No pressure. Just thought it would be good to expand our social circle. Dom kissed her cheek. I'm going to take Liam to see the Christmas lights downtown. Want to come? I have a migraine coming on. You two go. The moment they left, Tobias confirmed Audrey called Harlow in a panic. Dom listened to the recorded conversation in his car, while Liam was distracted by the holiday display. He knows something, Audrey hissed. He mentioned you specifically. Calm down, Harlow's accented voice replied. It could be coincidence. Did he seem suspicious? No, he's been attentive, loving even. Then we're fine. Accept the invitation. I'll come to dinner. We'll act like casual acquaintances. It might even help establish my presence in your lives for later. But what if? Audrey, darling, we've come too far to back out now. The supplements are working. Another week, maybe two, and it will look like natural causes. A tragic holiday heart attack. Just keep playing the devoted wife a little longer. Dom couldn't help but admire their confidence. They truly believed they were the predators rather than the prey. Later that night, after Liam was asleep, Dom added a crushed sleeping pill to Audrey's wine, just enough to ensure she wouldn't wake when he accessed her phone. While she slept, he meticulously documented her text exchanges with Harlow, transferred incriminating photos to his secure server, and placed a sophisticated tracking program on her device. Christmas Eve arrived with a blanket of fresh snow. Dom spent the morning preparing, not for dinner, but for the next phase of his revenge. He visited his bank, made several strategic transfers, and delivered sealed envelopes to his attorney with explicit instructions. When Audrey's parents arrived at 6 p.m., Dom greeted them warmly. Her father, Martin, returned the enthusiasm, but her mother, Patricia, studied her daughter with newfound suspicion, Dom's seeds of doubt already sprouting. Next came Dom's sister, Renata, with her husband and their teenage daughter. As a prosecutor for the district attorney's office, Renata had a natural suspicion that Dom was counting on. Tobias and his wife arrived at 6:30, followed immediately by Victor Harlow, who brought an expensive bottle of wine and European charm. Victor, so glad you could make it. Dom welcomed him with a firm handshake. Audrey's mentioned your gallery. I've been meaning to visit. The pleasure is mine, Harlow replied smoothly. Your home is exquisite. Dom watched as Harlow expertly worked the room, complimenting Patricia's earrings, discussing scotch with Martin, and engaging Renata's husband about his vintage car collection. He was good, perhaps too good. Several times during appetizers, Dom caught Audrey's warning glances toward her lover, silently urging restraint. Dinner was served at 7:30, a catered affair that allowed Dom to focus on his guests rather than cooking. He positioned Harlow directly across from Audrey, forcing them to limit their eye contact or risk revealing their connection. So, Victor, Dom said as the main course was served, how does one get into the art dealing business? It seems so specialized. Harlow launched into a practice story about apprenticing at a gallery in London, then establishing his own connections in the art world. Dom allowed him to spin his tale while subtly directing the conversation toward Harlow's background. And before London, where does one study to become an art dealer? A flicker of discomfort crossed Harlow's face. I'm largely self-taught. My formal education was in finance. Actually, the University of Cape Town. Dom nodded pleasantly. South Africa, explains the accent. How fascinating. When did you move to the States? About 7 years ago. Started in New York, then Los Angeles, now Portland. Harlow sipped his wine. I follow the emerging art scenes. And the wealthy patrons, I imagine, Renata interjected with a prosecutor's instinct for weakness. Harlow smiled tightly. Art and commerce have always been intertwined. Speaking of commerce, Dom smoothly redirected. I understand your gallery is hosting a special exhibition next month? Yes, indeed. Modern sculptors from the Pacific Northwest. You and Audrey should attend the opening. Dom raised his glass. We be delighted. The evening progressed with superficial pleasantries, but underneath ran currents of tension. Dom observed Audrey's increasing discomfort as he continued to probe Harlow's background with seemingly innocent questions. By dessert, both conspirators were visibly on edge. As guests prepared to leave, Dom executed the evening's final maneuver. He pulled Harlow aside, ostensibly to show him a painting in his office. I understand you're quite knowledgeable about valuation, Dom said, closing the door behind them. I've been considering diversifying my investments. Harlow relaxed slightly, on familiar ground. Art could be an excellent investment vehicle. I'd be happy to advise you. Dom moved to his desk and opened a folder. Actually, I'm more interested in your opinion on these. He spread out surveillance photos of Harlow and Audrey, entering his apartment building, embracing one particularly explicit image of them in Harlow's car. The color drained from Harlow's face. These are quite compelling, Dom finished, his voice calm, as is the recording of you discussing how to poison me. Harlow's hand moved subtly toward his jacket pocket. I wouldn't, Dom warned. Tobias was military police for 12 years. He recognized the outline of your weapon the moment you arrived. It's why you're sitting across from rather than beside me. What do you want? Harlow asked, mask of charm completely dissolved. At the moment, nothing. Merely an introduction. Now you know who I am. Dom gathered the photos unhurriedly. We'll discuss terms after the holidays. Until then, continue as normal. You're blackmailing me? Dom's laugh held no humor. No, Mr. Harlow. I'm informing you of what's coming. Blackmail would imply you have a choice. When they rejoined the party, Harlow's composure had cracked. He made hasty goodbyes, avoiding Audrey's concerned glance. After all guests had departed and Liam was tucked in bed, Audrey confronted Dom in their bedroom. What did you say to Victor? He practically ran out of here. Dom removed his cufflinks calmly. We discussed art investments. Perhaps he's not as confident in the market as he claims. Audrey studied him, searching for signs he knew more than he revealed. Finding none in his carefully controlled expression, she retreated to the bathroom. Alone, Dom allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. The trap was set, the players positioned. Christmas morning would bring the next phase of his plan, one that would shatter the foundation of Audrey and Harlow's scheme while ensuring Dom maintained the moral and legal high ground. After all, revenge was meaningless if it cost him custody of Liam, and Dominic Veritas intended to take everything that mattered while leaving his enemies with nothing. Chapter 5. The Poison Chalice. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold. Dom woke before Audrey, his mind cleared despite the complexities of his plan. Today would set in motion the destruction of Victor Harlow, while continuing to build the case against Audrey. Liam burst into their bedroom at 6:30 a.m., vibrating with excitement. Santa came. Can we open presents? Please, please, please. Dom laughed genuinely. His love for his son remained the one pure thing in his life. Let's let Mom wake up first, buddy. Audrey stirred, putting on a convincing show of Christmas enthusiasm for Liam's benefit. Dom watched her carefully, noting the moments when her smile didn't reach her eyes, cataloging each glance at her phone. Downstairs, surrounded by wrapping paper and ribbons, Dom presented Audrey with a small, elegant box. Merry Christmas, my love. Inside was a platinum bracelet studded with diamonds. Audrey's surprise seemed genuine as she clasped it on her wrist. It's beautiful, Dom. Thank you. She kissed him, maintaining their facade of marital bliss. Consider it the first of many gifts today, Dom replied with a cryptic smile. After breakfast, while Audrey cleaned up the kitchen, Dom slipped away to his office for a scheduled call with Tobias. Harlow left his apartment an hour ago, Tobias reported. Headed to the gallery. Perfect. Proceed as planned. Dom returned to family festivities, suggesting they take Liam sledding at the park in the afternoon. Audrey agreed, though she checked her phone repeatedly throughout the morning. Expecting a call? Dom asked innocently. Just checking the weather, she lied smoothly. At noon, as they prepared for sledding, Dom's phone rang. He answered, listened briefly, then frowned. Everything okay? Audrey asked. Slight problem at the gallery, Dom improvised. Water pipe burst. The security system alerted Tobias. Since we're heading out anyway, I'll swing by and check the damage. Shouldn't take long. Audrey's expression shifted from concern to concealed panic. Victor's gallery? Why would your security system? Not Victor's. The riverfront gallery space. Dom maintained an innocent expression. Part of the development project. Why would you think of Victor's place? Since we were just talking about him last night. Her recovery was quick but insufficient. I'll meet you both at the park, Dom said, grabbing his coat. Start sledding without me. As he drove, Dom received confirmation from Tobias that everything was proceeding according to plan. 3 of his most trusted employees had entered Harlow's gallery through the back entrance, disabled the security cameras, and were awaiting further instructions. Harlow looked up in surprise when Dom walked through the front door of his otherwise empty gallery. We're closed for Christmas, he said, tension evident in his shoulders. Dom smiled coldly. I'm not here as a customer. Your threats won't work, Harlow said, attempting bravado. I've handled worse than you. Have you? Dom circled the gallery slowly, examining paintings with feigned interest. 3 wealthy women in 5 years. Quite the profitable pattern until now. Harlow blanched. You don't know what you're talking about. Sandra Mercer in Los Angeles. Divorced her husband 6 months after meeting you. Dead from apparent suicide 3 months later. You disappeared with approximately $2 million. Dom paused before a large abstract canvas. Then Elizabeth Cornell in San Francisco. Widowed, inexplicably changed her will to include you. Died of accidental overdose. Another $3 million. This is absurd. Then the fraud charges that mysteriously disappeared when the primary witness recanted. Very convenient. Dom turned to face Harlow directly. You're sloppy, Victor, or whatever your real name is. Harlow's hand moved toward his desk. My men are already here, Dom said quietly. 3 of them. Ex-military, like Tobias. Currently holding position in your back office, your storage room, and by your private elevator. Would you like to meet them? The gallery owner froze, calculation replacing fear in his eyes. What do you want from me? Your complete cooperation, Dom replied simply. Starting with your phone. After initial resistance, Harlow surrendered his device. Dom's tech specialist remotely accessed it, downloading messages, photos, and call logs documenting his relationship with Audrey and their murder plot. Now for phase 2, Dom continued. You're going to call Audrey and break things off. Tell her you've been discovered, that you're leaving town immediately. She'll never believe that. We have a plan to murder me and take my fortune. Yes, I'm aware. Dom's voice remained eerily calm. But plans change when variables shift. I'm a variable you failed to properly calculate. For the next hour, Dom outlined exactly what Harlow would say to Audrey. The gallery owner's resistance crumbled as Dom methodically revealed the extent of his knowledge, not just of their affair and murder plot, but of Harlow's numerous financial irregularities, the falsified provenance papers for several pieces in his gallery, and his real identity, Vincent Hargrove, wanted in the UK for art fraud. You make the call now, on speaker, Dom instructed. Deviate from the script, and those fraud charges in California will suddenly be back on the table, along with new evidence concerning Sandra Mercer's suicide. Trapped, Harlow complied. When Audrey answered, he launched into the prepared speech about being exposed, about Dom's business associates asking questions, about needing to leave the country immediately. What are you talking about? Audrey's voice was frantic. Victor, we discussed this. Nothing's changed. Everything's changed, Harlow replied, genuine fear bleeding into his performance. Your husband is not who we thought. I'm leaving tonight. You should consider doing the same. But the plan. Forget the plan. Harlow nearly shouted, his eyes locked on Dom's impassive face. It's over, Audrey. I'm sorry. After the call ended, Dom smiled thinly. Very convincing. Now for your departure. You're letting me go? Disbelief colored Harlow's voice. In a manner of speaking, Dom's men emerged from their positions surrounding Harlow. One held a syringe. What is that? Panic returned to Harlow's features. The same poison you and my wife planned for me, Dom answered. Poetic, don't you think? But unlike your plan, this won't kill you. Just render you unconscious for transport. Despite his struggles, Harlow was efficiently subdued. As the drug took effect, Dom leaned close. You chose the wrong family to target, Victor. By this time tomorrow, you'll wish I had simply turned you over to the police. Dom checked his watch. Barely an hour had passed. Plenty of time to join Audrey and Liam at the park, to maintain his alibi, while Tobias's team transported an unconscious Victor Harlow to a remote property Dom owned in eastern Oregon. At the sledding hill, Dom found Audrey distracted and pale, checking her phone repeatedly. Liam, oblivious to the adult tensions, demanded Dom's participation in building a snow fort. Is everything okay? Dom asked Audrey with manufactured concern. You seem worried. Fine, she replied automatically. How was the gallery? Much damage from the water? Less than expected, Dom answered truthfully. The damage to Harlow's gallery and life was precisely what he had anticipated. That evening, as they prepared for Christmas dinner, Audrey received a text from an anonymous number. Actually, Dom, using a burner phone. Flight landed. Heading south. Will contact when safe. Dom watched as relief flickered across her face, followed by confusion. Her lover had abandoned their plan, but was apparently still communicating. The uncertainty would destabilize her, make her vulnerable to Dom's next move. After Liam was asleep, surrounded by new toys, Audrey retreated to their bedroom, claiming a headache. Dom allowed her space, knowing she would attempt to contact Harlow. In his office, he monitored her futile efforts through the spyware on her phone. Each unanswered call, each undelivered message increased her panic. By midnight, she was frantic, her careful plotting unraveling as her co-conspirator had seemingly vanished. Meanwhile, Dom received confirmation from Tobias. Harlow had been secured at the remote property, a former hunting lodge now repurposed for Dom's needs. The gallery's security footage had been altered to show Harlow leaving voluntarily with a suitcase. His apartment appeared hastily abandoned, passport and essential documents missing. To all appearances, Victor Harlow had fled Oregon in a panic. Dom sipped his scotch, contemplating the next phase. Harlow's disappearance would pressure Audrey, potentially driving her to desperate measures. Dangerous, but necessary. To achieve true revenge, Dom needed her to reveal herself completely, to transform from calculated conspirator to exposed predator. Only then could he deliver the final blow with absolute legal and moral justification. Tomorrow would begin Audrey's systematic destruction. Her lover gone, her plans in shambles, she would face the full consequences of crossing Dominic Veritas. As Christmas night deepened, Dom allowed himself a rare moment of genuine emotion. Cold, focused rage. These people had planned to leave his son without a father, had plotted his death over intimate dinners and between stolen kisses. The punishment he planned wasn't just revenge. It was justice. Chapter 6, The Unraveling. The week between Christmas and New Year's unfolded according to Dom's careful design. While maintaining a facade of normalcy for Liam's benefit, he systematically dismantled Audrey's security and sense of control. First came financial pressure. Dom quietly restricted access to their joint accounts, citing unusual activity to the bank. Audrey discovered this when her credit card was declined during a shopping trip. There must be some mistake, she told Dom that evening. My card was rejected at Nordstrom. Dom frowned with convincing concern. That's strange. I'll call the bank in the morning. Probably just holiday fraud protection. Use cash for now. Of course, when Audrey checked their safe, half of the emergency cash was mysteriously missing. Next came social isolation. Dom casually mentioned to their friends that Audrey hadn't been feeling well lately, perhaps the stress of the holidays. He suggested they give her space, effectively cutting off her support network without raising suspicion. At the same time, he increased his own visibility as a devoted husband and father. He left work early, brought home dinner, organized family movie nights. To outsiders, Dom appeared to be compensating for his workaholic tendencies, finally prioritizing family. 3 days after Christmas, Dom implemented the next phase, surveillance anxiety. He mentioned installing a new security system after that break-in down the street. The cameras will cover all entry points, he explained as technicians worked throughout the house. And the monitoring service alerts my phone if there's unusual activity. The message was clear. Audrey's movements were being watched. Her home was no longer a safe space for plotting. Meanwhile, Victor Harlow remained at the remote property, his disappearance now generating whispers in Portland's art community. Dom arranged for a concerned client to file a police report, ensuring official attention while controlling the narrative. Detective Roland Keyes, an old acquaintance who owed Dom a favor, was assigned to the case. He interviewed Dom regarding Harlow's attendance at their Christmas Eve dinner. Seemed perfectly normal, Dom told the detective in his office, with Tobias present as a witness. Mentioned some upcoming travels, but nothing specific. Is something wrong? Probably nothing, Keyes replied. His gallery assistant reported him missing after he failed to return for a scheduled appointment. His apartment looks like he packed in a hurry. Any chance your wife might know more? I understand they had some professional contact regarding artwork. Dom frowned thoughtfully. She never mentioned anything beyond basic business interactions. But you're welcome to speak with her. The detective's interview with Audrey, which Dom observed from his home office via the new security cameras, revealed her growing distress. She maintained composure while claiming minimal acquaintance with Harlow, but her eyes darted nervously to her phone throughout the conversation. That evening, Dom discovered her frantically searching through his office files. Looking for something? He asked from the doorway. Audrey startled violently. I need the insurance paperwork. For my car. The registration renewal. In the filing cabinet under Vehicles, Dom replied mildly. Though I'm surprised you'd need that at 11 o'clock at night. Her hands trembled as she pulled out the correct folder. Dom noticed she also glanced at the insurance life folder before closing the drawer. Is everything all right, Audrey? You seem on edge lately. Just holiday stress, she muttered, avoiding his gaze. You'd tell me if something was bothering you, wouldn't you? We don't keep secrets from each other. The irony hung heavy in the air between them. Of course, she lied. The following day, Dom received word from Tobias. Harlow had finally broken. After 5 days of isolation, psychological pressure, and a strategic application of fear, the art dealer had provided a complete confession, documented on video. He's detailed everything, Tobias reported. The affair, the murder plot, previous victims. Even provided account numbers for his offshore holdings. Perfect, Dom replied. Maintain his isolation. I'll need him coherent for the final phase. That night, Dom executed his masterstroke. While Audrey slept, aided by the sedative he'd added to her wine, he accessed her laptop. Rather than simply gathering evidence, he planted it. Emails supposedly recovered from deletion showing her correspondence with Harlow, discussing Dom's murder and the insurance payout. The emails were carefully backdated and contained just enough factual information to be convincing, while including details that could be verified through other evidence Dom had collected. He then placed a call from Audrey's phone to Detective Key's office, immediately disconnecting, a seemingly accidental dial that would appear in phone records, suggesting panic. The next morning, New Year's Eve, Dom suggested they spend the day as a family. Let's take Liam to the Science Museum, then have an early dinner. He can watch the East Coast ball drop before bedtime. Audrey agreed distractedly, her attention clearly elsewhere. Throughout the museum visit, she checked her phone compulsively, growing increasingly agitated when no messages arrived. At the restaurant, while Liam was distracted by dessert, Dom leaned forward. "You seem troubled all week. Is there something you want to talk about, Audrey?" For a moment, indecision flickered across her face. Dom could almost see her calculating. Confession? New plan? Continued deception? "I'm fine," she finally said. "Just tired." "You know you can tell me anything," Dom pressed, his voice gentle. "Whatever it is, we can work through it together." The offer of false salvation, the suggestion that confession might lead to forgiveness, was the final psychological pressure point. That night, after Liam was asleep, Audrey broke. Dom found her in their bathroom, a glass of wine in hand, tears streaming down her face. "What's happened?" he asked, maintaining his concerned husband persona. "Victor's gone," she whispered. "He's just gone." "The art dealer? What do you mean gone?" "We were." She swallowed hard. "We were involved." Dom allowed shock and hurt to transform his features. "Involved? You mean?" "We were having an affair," Audrey confessed, words tumbling out. "For months. And now he's disappeared and I don't know what to do." Dom stepped back, letting betrayal replace concern. "How could you do this?" "To me? To our family." "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I made a terrible mistake. But Dom, I'm scared. Something's wrong. Victor wouldn't just leave like this." "What aren't you telling me?" Dom demanded. "Was it just an affair, or was there more?" Audrey's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "The Christmas lights, Audrey. The frayed wires. Liam said you were scraping them with a knife." "That was an accident. I was trying to fix them." "Was it?" Dom's voice hardened. "Or was it something else? Something involving Victor and my life insurance policy?" Her face crumpled. "It wasn't. We didn't." Dom pulled out his phone, revealing the surveillance photos of her with Harlow. "Don't lie to me anymore. I know everything." Audrey collapsed onto the bathroom floor, all pretense abandoned. "He said no one would get hurt, that we would just pressure you to sign the business over. The lights were just to scare you, to make you think accidents were happening around you. And the supplements? The poison?" Her shock was genuine. "How did you?" "I've known for weeks, Audrey. Every plot, every plan, every meeting with your lover. Did you really think I wouldn't protect myself? That I would just die conveniently while you collected millions?" Rage replaced fear in her eyes. "You arrogant bastard. You were never home. Always at work. Always with your precious projects. Victor appreciated me, valued me." "Victor Harlow appreciated your access to my money," Dom corrected coldly. "Just like he appreciated Sandra Mercer's and Elizabeth Cornell's before you." "Did he tell you about them?" "His previous lovers who died mysteriously after changing their wills in his favor." The color drained from Audrey's face. "You're lying." "Am I?" "Perhaps you should ask Detective Keyes about Victor's background." "Oh, wait. You already called him, didn't you?" "From your phone last night around 2 a.m. I didn't call anyone. The phone records say otherwise." Dom's smile was devoid of warmth. "Just like the recovered emails detailing your murder plot say otherwise." Audrey lunged for the bathroom door, but Dom blocked her path. "It's too late for running, Audrey. Far too late." As midnight approached and distant fireworks began celebrating the new year, Dominic Veritas laid out the consequences of his wife's betrayal. There would be no police involvement, yet. No public scandal. Instead, Audrey would sign divorce papers giving Dom full custody of Liam and relinquishing all claims to his assets. In return, the evidence of your murder plot stays private, Dom concluded. You walk away with nothing but your freedom. Refuse, and Detective Keyes receives everything. The recordings, the emails, Harlow's confession. Confession, Audrey whispered. You've spoken to Victor? Dom's smile chilled her. Let's just say Victor and I have come to an understanding about his role in all this. He's been quite forthcoming. Defeated, Audrey signed the papers Dom produced from his briefcase. As she scrawled her signature, tears splashing onto the documents, Dom felt neither satisfaction nor relief, only cold confirmation that justice was being served. Pack a bag, he instructed. You'll stay at a hotel tonight. Tomorrow, you'll leave Portland. I don't care where you go, but you will never contact Liam or me again. You can't keep me from my son, Audrey protested weakly. Dom placed a final document before her. This is a confession detailing your affair with Harlow and your plot to murder me. Sign it, and it remains sealed unless you violate our agreement. Challenge me for custody, attempt contact, speak to anyone about what happened here, and it goes straight to the police." As Audrey signed with a shaking hand, Dom added, "Your lover made the same arrangement. Neither of you can implicate the other without destroying yourselves." The perfect trap, mutually assured destruction that ensured both conspirators' silence and cooperation. While Audrey packed, Dom called Tobias with new instructions regarding Harlow. The art dealer would be released, with evidence of his past crimes held as insurance against any future trouble. By 1 a.m., Audrey was gone from the house, escorted by one of Tobias's men to a downtown hotel. By morning, she would be on a plane to wherever she chose to rebuild her shattered life, as long as it was far from Dom and Liam. Dom poured himself a celebratory scotch and gazed out at the winter night, the Christmas tree's lights reflecting in the window. Phase 1 of his revenge was complete. Audrey and Harlow were separated, neutralized, and facing the consequences of their betrayal. But Dominic Veritas wasn't finished. Not by far. The real punishment was yet to come. Chapter 7. The Ruthless Reckoning. 6 months passed. Spring turned to summer, and the initial shock of Audrey's departure had settled into a new normal for Dom and Liam. Dom had crafted a careful narrative for his son and their social circle. Audrey had suffered a nervous breakdown and was receiving treatment at a private facility in Arizona. Dom presented himself as the supportive husband, sending regular care packages and facilitating occasional phone calls between mother and son. These calls, of course, were carefully monitored. Audrey, bound by their agreement and the damning evidence Dom held, played her role perfectly, speaking vaguely about getting better and promising to come home when the doctors say it's time. For Liam's sake, Dom maintained this fiction flawlessly. In private, however, he was executing the second phase of his revenge, systematic destruction of both betrayers' lives from afar. Victor Harlow, released from his captivity with a clear understanding of the consequences should he cause trouble, had fled to Montreal. There, he attempted to establish himself in the art scene under a slightly modified name. Dom ensured his efforts failed spectacularly. Anonymous tips to Canadian authorities regarding art fraud led to raids on Harlow's new gallery. Key clients received disturbing information about his business practices. Landlords mysteriously backed out of rental agreements. Financial institutions flagged his accounts for suspicious activity. Within 3 months, Harlow was functionally blacklisted throughout the Canadian art world. His debts mounted as his income evaporated. Meanwhile, Audrey had settled in San Diego, attempting to rebuild her life with a modest settlement Dom had generously provided, just enough to maintain appearances without offering real financial security. She found work at an upscale boutique, rented a small apartment, and began dating a divorced restaurant owner named Paul. Dom watched it all unfold through the reports from the private investigators he'd retained. Every small victory in Audrey's new life became a target for his meticulous interference. The boutique mysteriously received complaints about Audrey from customers. Her apartment building changed ownership to a company requiring more stringent background checks, leading to uncomfortable questions about her past. Paul received an anonymous letter detailing Audrey's psychiatric history and suggesting he research her ex-husband's substantial life insurance policy. Each setback was designed to be deniable, untraceable to Dom, yet devastating to Audrey's stability and peace of mind. She would never know security or trust again. On a sunny July morning, Dom received a call from Tobias with unexpected news. Victor Harlow had been found dead in his Montreal apartment, an apparent suicide. Overdose, Tobias reported. Left a note mentioning financial troubles and unforgivable mistakes from my past. Canadian authorities are treating it as straightforward. Dom absorbed this information without emotion. Any mention of Audrey or me? None. The note was mostly apologies to someone named Elizabeth. Presumably Elizabeth Cornell, his previous victim. Make sure our contacts verify it's actually him, not some desperate final deception. Already done. Fingerprints confirm identity. He's gone, boss. Dom hung up, contemplating this development. Harlow's death hadn't been part of his plan. He'd wanted the man to suffer indefinitely, but simplified matters. One loose and permanently tied off. That evening, as Dom helped Liam with his summer reading, his phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. "You killed him, didn't you? Is this what you want from me too?" Audrey, her first direct communication outside their scripted calls. Dom typed back calmly, "I have no idea what you're talking about. Focus on your recovery." Her response came instantly. "Bullshit. Victor's dead. I know you're behind it. Behind everything that's happening to me." "Wrong number," Dom replied, then blocked her. 20 minutes later, his home security system alerted him to an emergency call from Liam's phone. The boy was calling 911 from his bedroom. Dom rushed upstairs to find his son panic-stricken, phone in hand. "Mom called me," Liam cried. "She said bad men were coming to hurt us because of what you did. She told me to call the police." Dom gently took the phone, ending the call before it connected. "Your mom is confused, buddy. Remember how the doctors said her mind plays tricks sometimes? But she sounded really scared, Dad. She was crying." "I know, and I'm sorry that upset you." Dom sat beside his son. "Sometimes when people are sick like Mom, they believe things that aren't real. Nothing bad is going to happen to us." After calming Liam with reassurances and a bedtime story, Dom returned to his office and made a call. "She's escalating," he told Nora Blackwell, his attorney. "Time for the restraining order and to revisit custody arrangements." The next morning, Audrey was served with legal papers at her apartment, a temporary restraining order prohibiting contact with Liam, citing her delusional behavior and attempts to frighten a minor child. The custody agreement they'd signed allowed for supervised visitation, rights contingent on Audrey's continued mental stability. This incident provided perfect grounds to terminate those rights. 2 days later, Dom received another call from Tobias. Audrey had been arrested in San Diego for attempting to purchase an illegal firearm from an undercover officer. "That wasn't us," Dom said, genuinely surprised. "No, sir. Appears she sought out the connection herself. Told the dealer she needed protection from her dangerous ex-husband." Dom considered this development. Audrey's spiral was accelerating faster than he'd anticipated. The combination of Harlow's death, her increasing isolation, and the loss of contact with Liam had pushed her towards self-destruction. "Have our attorney in San Diego offer assistance," Dom instructed. "Post her bail, but ensure the conditions include psychiatric evaluation." "Helping her a boss?" Tobias sounded confused. Controlling the narrative, Dom corrected. "I want her evaluated by professionals of our choosing. Her instability documented officially. It's the final piece we need." The psychiatric evaluation diagnosed Audrey with paranoid delusions centering on her ex-husband. Her claims about Dom's systematic destruction of her life, the murder of her lover, and the Christmas lights attempt were dismissed as elaborate persecutory fantasies. When she became increasingly agitated during questioning, insisting that Dom had tortured Victor Harlow into producing a false confession, the psychiatrist recommended involuntary commitment for her own safety. 3 days after her arrest, Audrey McAllister, formerly Veritas, was committed to Ocean View Psychiatric Hospital for a 30-day evaluation period. Dom received the news with grim satisfaction. She had conspired to murder him, to leave Liam fatherless for money. Now she would experience what it meant to have her freedom and identity stripped away, not for days or weeks, but permanently. Because Dominic Veritas had one final move to make. With Audrey institutionalized, Dom filed for permanent sole custody of Liam, citing her severe mental illness and dangerous delusions. The court date was set for August 15th, 1 week after Audrey's scheduled release from Ocean View. Meanwhile, Dom arranged for Liam to attend a prestigious summer camp for the next 3 weeks, removing him from the equation while Dom implemented the final phase of his plan. On August 1st, Audrey received her first visitor at Ocean View, Renata Veritas, Dom's sister. "Dom doesn't know I'm here," Renata told her, voice low despite the private visitation room. "But I've been concerned about certain things I've noticed." Hope flickered in Audrey's eyes. "You believe me? Let's say I have questions." Renata slid a notepad across the table. "Write down everything," dates, details, names. Don't speak aloud. The staff reports everything back to Dom. For the next hour, Audrey furiously documented her claims. The affair with Harlow, their plot against Dom, his discovery and retaliation, Victor's disappearance, and the systematic dismantling of her new life. When she finished, Renata took the pages, promising to investigate discreetly. The custody hearing is in 2 weeks, Renata reminded her. If what you've written is true, we need proof before then. Audrey leaned forward urgently. Check Victor's gallery in Portland. The basement storage room has a false wall. That's where Dom would have taken him. Renata's eyes widened with convincing shock. How do you know about a false wall? Victor showed me once. It's where he kept his most valuable pieces. Dom must have found it when he interrogated Victor. Renata nodded gravely. I'll check it out. Hang in there, Audrey. The truth will come out. After Renata left, Audrey felt real hope for the first time in months. Someone finally believed her. Someone was investigating. What she didn't know was that Renata had driven directly to Dom's office to deliver the confession she'd skillfully extracted, a confession that now detailed not just the murder plot, but Audrey's knowledge of secret spaces in Harlow's gallery, where evidence might be hidden. That night, Dom and Tobias visited the now-abandoned gallery. Using Audrey's detailed description, they located the concealed room behind a storage shelf. Perfect, Dom said, surveying the space. Plant the evidence here. Her fingerprints are still on file from the arrest, correct? Yes, boss. We can place them on the key items. Do it. And make sure Detective Keyes receives an anonymous tip about this location on August 13th, 2 days before the custody hearing. The trap was set for Audrey's final downfall. Upon her release from Ocean View, she would believe Renata was working to help her. In reality, she was walking into a carefully constructed legal nightmare that would ensure she never saw Liam again. The evidence planted in Harlow's secret room included detailed plans for Dom's murder, financial documents showing how Audrey would access his accounts after his death, and pharmaceutical research on untraceable poisons, all bearing Audrey's fingerprints or handwriting. Most damning of all was a flash drive containing video of Audrey and Harlow discussing their plan, carefully edited from legitimate surveillance footage combined with advanced deepfake technology. The video quality was deliberately imperfect, just enough to be admissible while disguising the technical manipulation. On August 10th, Audrey was released from Ocean View with instructions to continue outpatient treatment. She immediately called Renata, desperate for updates. "I've found something," Renata confirmed. "But it's complicated. We need to meet in person. Come to my office tomorrow morning." Hope renewed, Audrey spent the night preparing for the custody hearing, organizing her thoughts, gathering what little evidence she had of Dom's manipulation. The next morning, she arrived at Renata's law office only to find Detective Keyes waiting instead. "Ms. McAllister," he greeted her formally. "I need to ask you some questions about Victor Harlow and a potential conspiracy to commit murder." The blood drained from Audrey's face. "Where's Renata?" "Ms. Veritas called me after discovering some disturbing information," Keyes explained. She felt legally obligated to report it. Renata's betrayal struck Audrey like a physical blow. She trusted Dom's sister, believed she was an ally. The questioning lasted hours. Every explanation Audrey offered was countered with evidence of her guilt. Her insistence that Dom had framed her only reinforced the psychiatric evaluation's conclusion of paranoid delusions. When Keyes finally placed her under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, Audrey collapsed in defeated sobs. "He won," she whispered. "He destroyed everything." On August 15th, as Audrey sat in county jail awaiting arraignment, the family court granted Dom permanent sole custody of Liam. The judge cited Audrey's severe mental illness, violent tendencies, and ongoing criminal proceedings as ground for terminating all parental rights. That evening, Dom celebrated his victory quietly in his home office. Audrey faced years in prison. Her reputation, freedom, and relationship with Liam were permanently destroyed. Even if she somehow avoided conviction, she would remain forever branded as mentally unstable, her claims about Dom's machinations dismissed as delusions. As for Harlow, His death had been convenient, but unnecessary for Dom's plans. The man had destroyed himself, crushed under the pressure of losing everything he'd built through manipulation and fraud. Dom poured himself a congratulatory scotch and gazed at the photo of Liam on his desk. Everything he'd done had been to protect his son, to ensure the boy would never again be used as a pawn in someone else's scheme. Tomorrow, he would pick up Liam from summer camp. They would begin their new life together, free from Audrey's betrayal and Harlow's manipulations. Dominic Veritas had faced the ultimate betrayal and responded with calculated, merciless justice. Those who had conspired to destroy him had instead destroyed themselves. As he had told Harlow months ago, he played to win. Always. Chapter 8. The Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. 3 years passed with the relentless efficiency that characterized Dom's life. Liam grew from a confused 6-year-old to a thoughtful 9-year-old who rarely mentioned his mother anymore. The official story, that Audrey had suffered a mental breakdown culminating in criminal behavior, was accepted without question by their social circle. Dom had rebuilt their lives methodically. They'd moved to a new home in Lake Oswego, away from the memories of betrayal. Veritas Construction had expanded into Seattle and San Francisco. Dom had even begun dating occasionally. Nothing serious, just enough to present the image of a well-adjusted single father moving forward. Audrey remained incarcerated at the Oregon Women's Correctional Facility, serving a 12-year sentence for conspiracy to commit murder. Her appeals had been denied, her claims of Dom's manipulation dismissed as further evidence of her delusions. As for Victor Harlow, he existed now only as a footnote in Portland's art community, a talented but troubled dealer who had died under regrettable circumstances. The perfect December evening found Dom and Liam decorating their Christmas tree, a tradition Dom had carefully maintained despite its painful associations. "Dad," Liam asked, hanging a handmade ornament. "Do you ever miss Mom?" The question caught Dom off guard. Liam rarely initiated conversations about Audrey anymore. "I miss the person I thought she was," Dom answered carefully. "The mother who loved you very much." Liam nodded, absorbing this. "Mrs. Kelsey says that sometimes sick people get better. Could Mom get better someday?" Mrs. Kelsey was Liam's therapist, a necessary support Dom had arranged following Audrey's departure and subsequent imprisonment. "Mental illness is complicated," Dom explained. "Some people recover, others don't. The important thing is that you're safe and loved. Could I write her a Christmas card?" Mrs. Kelsey said it might help me process my feelings. Dom hesitated. Direct contact with Audrey wasn't part of his plan. He'd worked diligently to sever that connection, to ensure Liam would eventually forget the woman who had been willing to leave him motherless for money and a lover. But refusing might raise questions, might make Liam suspicious of the narrative Dom had constructed. "I think I'll be fine," Dom conceded. "I'll help you send it to the facility." Later that night, after reviewing Liam's innocuous card, filled with details about school and Christmas wishes, Dom confronted an unexpected emotion: doubt. Not about Audrey's guilt or the justice of her punishment. Those remained certainties in Dom's mind, but about the totality of his revenge, its extension to complete erasure of a mother from her child's life. This wasn't weakness, Dom assured himself. It was strategic calculation. Liam was growing more perceptive. Eventually, he would investigate his mother's story himself. Better to control that narrative now than face difficult questions later. The next day, Dom made 2 calls. First to Nora Blackwell, instructing her to arrange a supervised visit with Audrey at the correctional facility. "Are you sure about this?" Nora asked, concern evident. "After everything?" "It's for Liam," Dom explained. "A brief visit, heavily supervised. It will provide closure." His second call was to Tobias, who had transitioned from security chief to Dom's right hand at Veritas Construction. "I need complete surveillance on the visit. Recording devices, additional guards, everything." "Understood, boss. But why risk it? She's contained." "Loose ends," Dom replied simply. "I want to see her face to face, assess any remaining threat." In reality, Dom's motivations were more complex. The completeness of his victory demanded this final confirmation. Seeing Audrey broken, defeated, her spirit crushed under the weight of her imprisonment and isolation. 1 week before Christmas, Dom drove Liam to the correctional facility. He prepared his son carefully, explaining that his mother had done very bad things, but still cared about him. The visitor's room was sterile and impersonal. Audrey was already seated at a table when they entered, a guard standing nearby. 3 years of incarceration had aged her dramatically. Her once vibrant copper hair was dull and streaked with gray. Deep lines etched her face. Her prison uniform hung loose on her diminished frame. But her eyes, when they locked on Liam, they blazed with an intensity that unsettled Dom. Not the dead eyes of the thoroughly defeated. "Liam," she whispered, rising halfway before the guard motioned her back down. "Oh my God, you've grown so much." Liam approached cautiously, clutching Dom's hand. "Hi, Mom. You look so handsome, just like your dad." Her voice caught on the last word, eyes flickering to Dom with naked hatred before returning to the practiced warmth directed at her son. For 30 minutes, Audrey asked Liam gentle questions about school, friends, his hobbies. She laughed at his jokes, praised his accomplishments, behaved exactly like the loving mother she'd once pretended to be. Dom watched silently, evaluating every word, every gesture. This wasn't the broken woman he'd expected. This was someone who had adapted, who had constructed a new version of herself, one that could survive imprisonment while maintaining some essential core. When the visit concluded, Audrey hugged Liam tightly, whispering something in his ear that Dom couldn't catch. In the car, Dom asked casually, "What did Mom say to you at the end?" Liam buckled his seatbelt. "She said she was sorry she couldn't be with me, but that she thinks about me every day." Dom nodded, satisfied with the innocuous response. "Did you like seeing her?" "I guess. She seems sad." "Prison is a sad place," Dom acknowledged. "That's why we avoid doing things that put us there." The visit had served its purpose. Liam had seen his mother, received some measure of closure, and Dom had confirmed Audrey no longer posed any threat to their carefully reconstructed lives. 3 days before Christmas, however, Dom received an unexpected call from the correctional facility. Audrey had attempted suicide, swallowing pills hoarded from her psychiatric medication. "She's stable," the warden informed him, "but she left a note addressed to you and Liam. Protocol requires we notify you." "What does it say?" "I'm not at liberty to share the contents, Mr. Veritas, but you're welcome to come read it in person." Dom considered refusing, then recognized the opportunity to ensure whatever accusations the note contained would never reach Liam. At the facility, the warden handed Dom a sealed envelope. "She's in the infirmary under suicide watch. The psychologist believes seeing her son after years of separation triggered this episode." Dom opened the letter alone in a private room. "Dom, seeing Liam broke something in me that even prison couldn't touch. I realized I'll never be his mother again. You've made sure of that. You've won completely. I did terrible things. The affair, the plans with Victor, I deserve punishment. But what you did in return wasn't justice. It was monstrous. The methodical destruction of 2 lives to satisfy your need for control. I've had 3 years to reflect on what happened, to understand that you didn't just discover our plot. You transformed it into an opportunity for complete dominance. The Victor the First knew was weak and greedy, but he wasn't suicidal. Whatever you did to him broke him entirely. You weren't satisfied with divorce or even imprisonment. You needed to eradicate me from existence, to make Liam forget me, to destroy every aspect of my personhood. I'm tired of fighting the monster you revealed yourself to be. Your perfect revenge is complete. I hope it brings you the satisfaction you sought. Tell Liam I love him. It's the only truth that matters anymore. Audrey." Dom reread the letter twice, searching for hidden threats or manipulations. Finding none, he folded it precisely and placed it in his pocket. The accusation of monstrous behavior didn't trouble him. Audrey had plotted his death for financial gain, had been willing to orphan Liam for money and a lover. Her perspective on proportionate justice was irrelevant. Yet something in her words lingered uncomfortably. Not guilt. Dom felt no remorse for destroying those who had tried to destroy him, but a question about necessity, about where justice ended and vengeance began. He shook off the unwelcome introspection. Dominic Veritas didn't second-guess his decisions. He made them decisively and lived with the consequences. The warden reappeared. "Will you be visiting Ms. McAllister in the infirmary?" "No," Dom replied definitively. "That chapter is closed." On Christmas Eve, as Dom and Liam continued their tradition of driving through neighborhoods to admire holiday decorations, his phone rang with an unknown number. "Mr. Veritas?" An unfamiliar voice. "This is Chaplain Reynolds from the correctional facility. I'm calling about Audrey McAllister." Dom's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "What about her?" "She's asked me to contact you. She's made a second attempt. More serious this time. The doctors aren't optimistic." "I see." Dom kept his voice neutral, aware of Liam singing along to Christmas music beside him. "She's requested to see her son one last time. I understand the complicated circumstances, but—" "No," Dom interrupted firmly. "That's not possible." A pause. "Mr. Veritas, whatever occurred between you and Ms. McAllister, this appears to be a genuine deathbed request. As a man of faith, I urge you to consider." "The answer is no. Goodbye, Chaplain." Dom ended the call, pushing away the unwelcome question of whether even his ruthlessness had limits. Audrey had tried to kill him. She had forfeited any right to compassion, any claim to motherhood. If she died tonight, it would be the final line in a story Dom had written, the complete erasure of a threat to his family. The perfect revenge, executed flawlessly over years. Yet as they returned home and prepared for Christmas morning, Dom found himself returning to Audrey's letter. You transformed it into an opportunity for complete dominance. Had he simply responded with appropriate force to an existential threat? Later that night, after Liam was asleep, Dom's phone rang again, the chaplain. "She's gone, Mr. Veritas. Audrey passed 20 minutes ago." Dom absorbed this information without visible reaction. "I understand. She regained consciousness briefly at the end. Asked me to tell you something." The chaplain's voice held no judgment, only solemn purpose. She said, "Tell Dom he was right about Victor. He was using me, but wrong about Christmas. I never wanted to hurt Liam's father. I just wanted to scare you into paying attention to us again." After hanging up, Dom poured himself a scotch and stood before the Christmas tree. The same lights that had started everything 3 years ago glowed softly, illuminating ornaments collected over a lifetime, before and after Audrey. Had she been telling the truth at the end? Had the Christmas lights truly been meant as a warning rather than an attempt on his life? Had he built his elaborate revenge on a misinterpretation? No, the evidence had been clear. The supplements, the poison, the conspiracy with Harlow. Whatever revisionist history Audrey had created in her final moments couldn't change the documented facts. Dom finished his scotch, mentally closing the final chapter of Audrey McAllister's story. She had betrayed him, conspired against him, and paid the ultimate price. Justice had been served completely and irrevocably. Tomorrow would be Christmas morning. Liam would wake excited to open presents, blissfully unaware that his mother had died alone in a prison infirmary. Eventually, Dom would tell him. Another carefully constructed narrative that protected Liam while ensuring Audrey remained a cautionary tale rather than a person worthy of mourning. As he climbed the stairs to bed, Dom felt no triumph in Audrey's death, no satisfaction beyond the knowledge that this chapter was finally, permanently closed. His revenge had been methodical, comprehensive, and ultimately fatal, just as he had intended from the moment he discovered her betrayal. Dominic Veritas protected what was his. Always. Without mercy, without forgiveness, and without regret. Chapter 9. The Price of Victory. 5 years after Audrey's death, Dominic Veritas stood at the pinnacle of success. Veritas Construction had expanded into an international development firm. Their Lake Oswego home had been replaced by a modern architectural masterpiece overlooking the Columbia River. 14-year-old Liam was thriving, academically gifted, socially confident, the perfect reflection of his father's strength and ambition. The scars of betrayal had faded to nearly invisible lines, referenced only in occasional questions from Liam about the mother he barely remembered. She was troubled, Dom would explain with practiced neutrality. Mental illness, poor choices. She loved you, but couldn't overcome her demons. The narrative satisfied Liam's curiosity without revealing the uglier truths. The affair, the murder plot, Dom's meticulously executed revenge. Those details remained buried in sealed court records and Dom's carefully compartmentalized memory. On a crisp December afternoon, Dom sat in his expansive office reviewing year-end reports when his assistant announced an unexpected visitor. "Detective Roland Keyes is here to see you, sir. He says it's urgent." Dom frowned. He hadn't spoken to Keyes in years, not since Audrey's conviction. "Send him in." Keyes had aged significantly. Hair now completely gray, face lined with the weathering of a career spent confronting human darkness. But his eyes remained sharp, assessing. "Dominic," he greeted without warmth. "Been a while. Detective, what brings you here? I thought you'd retired." "Semi-retired. Consulting on cold cases." Keyes settled into a chair, uninvited, including some interesting loose ends from Victor Harlow's death. Dom maintained perfect composure. Harlow's suicide was thoroughly investigated years ago. What loose ends could possibly remain? That's the interesting part. A gallery in Montreal was renovated recently. Construction crew found a hidden compartment in the wall. Inside was a waterproof case containing a journal and USB drive. Keyes placed a file on Dom's desk. Harlow's final testament, recorded before his suicide. Dom didn't touch the file. And this concerns me because he names you specifically, details your involvement in his abduction, torture, and how you systematically destroyed his life after releasing him. Keyes leaned forward. He also provides compelling evidence that your wife's involvement in any murder plot was peripheral at best, manipulated by both Harlow and, more significantly, by you. Sounds like the desperate fabrications of a disturbed man, Dom replied evenly. A man with a documented history of fraud and manipulation of vulnerable women. That's what I thought initially, Keyes agreed, until forensic analysis confirmed the journal's authenticity. The evidence suggests Harlow didn't commit suicide at all. He was murdered after recording his confession. By whom? The evidence points to someone employed by Veritas Construction at the time. Someone who followed Harlow to Montreal on your orders. Tobias. Dom had sent him to monitor Harlow, not to kill him. But Tobias had always been overzealous in his loyalty, sometimes acting beyond his explicit instructions. These are serious accusations, Detective, based on the questionable testimony of a known criminal who, by your own admission, was attempting to manipulate my wife into murdering me. Keyes nodded. Serious indeed, which is why I came to you directly before taking this to the current investigation team. The implied offer was clear, cooperation in exchange for discretion. What exactly are you suggesting? Dom asked carefully. Harlow's evidence casts significant doubt on your wife's conviction. It suggests you manufactured or manipulated key evidence, coerced a false confession from Harlow, and orchestrated a complex frame-up. Keyes tapped the file. If true, you're looking at multiple felony charges. If true, Dom emphasized, which it isn't. Audrey McAllister was convicted in a court of law based on substantial evidence. Her appeals were denied. The fact that her co-conspirator attempted to absolve her posthumously means nothing. Ordinarily, I'd agree. But there's more. Keyes pulled out a second file. We've also recovered communications between you and your sister Renata, documenting your plan to trick Audrey into providing a false confession. Dom's mind raced. Renata had been careful. They both had. Any communications have been verbal, never written. Impossible. Renata kept receipts, Dominic. When she became a judge 2 years ago, she must have gotten nervous about past indiscretions. Created an insurance policy by documenting everything. Judge Renata Veritas. His sister had achieved her lifelong ambition, ascending to the federal bench, a position that required impeccable ethics and unimpeachable judgment. My sister would never betray family, Dom stated with absolute certainty. Not willingly, Keyes acknowledged. But her clerk found the documentation while researching a similar case. Duty-bound, he reported it. Renata is now under investigation herself, her judicial appointment in jeopardy. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't about justice for Audrey. This was leverage, a threat to Dom's sister unless he cooperated. What do you want, Keys? The truth. A full statement acknowledging you manipulated evidence against your wife. That her participation in any conspiracy was minimal, coerced by Harlow, and that you exploited the situation to destroy her. And if I refuse, then the case proceeds officially. Your sister loses her judgeship. You face multiple charges. And Liam learns that his father systematically destroyed his mother for a revenge that far exceeded any crime she committed. Liam, there it was, the true leverage. Dom had built his entire life around protecting his son, preserving their relationship. The thought of Liam discovering the full truth was intolerable. I need time to consider this. 24 hours, Keys stated, rising. I'm doing you a courtesy because of our history. Don't mistake it for weakness. After Keys departed, Dom sat motionless, calculating options and consequences. The detective was clearly operating outside official channels, possibly seeking a significant payment to suppress the evidence. But even if Dom paid, the threat would remain. More concerning was the mention of Renata's documentation. If such evidence truly existed, it represented a vulnerability Dom couldn't eliminate through his usual methods. That evening, Dom called his sister. We need to meet. Tonight. It's urgent. Renata agreed immediately, hearing the tension in his voice. They met at Dom's boat, docked on the Columbia River, a location free from potential surveillance. As they cruised into the darkness, Dom explained Keys's visit and allegations. Is it true? He asked finally. Did you document our arrangement regarding Audrey? Renata's silence was answer enough. Why? Dom demanded. After everything we did to protect each other, why create evidence that could destroy us both? Insurance, she admitted. When the judicial nomination came through, I realized how vulnerable I was. If anyone ever connected me to Audrey's case, questioned my role. So you protected yourself at my expense. I protected us both, Renata countered. The documentation is encrypted, stored where no one could access it. Keys is bluffing. Then how did he know about it? Renata's confidence faltered. I don't know. Maybe someone in my office discovered references to it. But the actual evidence remained secure. Dom studied his sister, the one person besides Tobias who knew the full extent of his actions against Audrey and Harlow. The one person he had trusted completely. If Keys is bluffing about your documentation, what about Harlow's journal? Likely also a bluff, Renata reasoned. Or possibly real, but legally problematic. A posthumous statement from a co-conspirator wouldn't hold up without corroboration. Dom considered this analysis. So we call his bluff. Exactly. Deny everything. Demand proof. Counter-threaten with harassment charges. The strategy was sound, aligned with Dom's natural instincts. Yet something had shifted, a fracture in the foundation of certainty that had carried him through the years since Audrey's betrayal. And if he's not bluffing, if this reaches Liam, Renata's expression softened. We'd manage it, present it as protecting him from an unstable mother and her manipulative lover. Liam's old enough to understand complex motivations. But Dom wasn't concerned about justifying his actions to a 14-year-old. He was concerned about preserving Liam's fundamental trust, the belief that his father, however ruthless in business, operated from a moral core when it came to family. I need to know exactly what documentation exists, Dom insisted. Tonight, they returned to shore, proceeding to Renata's home, where she accessed a secured digital vault containing the insurance she'd created. Recordings of conversations where Dom outlined his plan to frame Audrey, emails discussing the fabrication of evidence, even photographs of items before they were planted in Harlow's gallery. Delete it, Dom ordered. All of it. Now, Dom, be reasonable. Without this protection, it's not protection, it's a liability. Delete it, or I'll consider you as much a threat as Keys. The implications hung heavy between them. Renata had witnessed her brother's capacity for ruthlessness firsthand, had helped engineer it against Audrey. You wouldn't, she whispered, uncertainty in her voice. Family protects family, Dom responded coldly. Until they don't. Under his supervision, Renata deleted every file, every recording, every document connecting them to Audrey's case. Whether copies existed elsewhere remained unknown, a risk Dom would address separately. The next morning, Dom contacted Keyes, agreeing to meet at the detective's home rather than in any official capacity. The location confirmed Dom's suspicion. This was a personal operation, not departmental. "Have you considered my proposal?" Keyes asked, pouring coffee in his modest kitchen. "I have an alternative," Dom replied. "Retirement is expensive. Law enforcement pensions inadequate. Perhaps financial considerations would resolve whatever concerns you have about old cases." Keyes didn't even blink. "You're offering a bribe." "I'm offering compensation for your discretion regarding unfounded allegations that could damage my family unnecessarily." "Including your sister, the judge?" "Including my son, who doesn't deserve to have his mother's tragedy exploited." Keyes sipped his coffee contemplatively. $3 million. Transferred to accounts I designate. In exchange, Harlow's evidence and any documentation regarding your sister disappear permanently. The figure was precise, matching exactly the life insurance policy Audrey had supposedly coveted. Dom wondered if Keyes had orchestrated this symmetry intentionally, as commentary. $2 million, Dom countered automatically. "Half now, half when I confirm all materials are destroyed." "Done." Keyes extended his hand. "I always knew you were the type to resolve problems practically, Dominic." As they shook on their arrangement, Dom felt no relief, only calculated determination. The payment would proceed, but this vulnerability couldn't remain. Keyes represented an ongoing threat, one that required permanent resolution. Over the next week, Dom methodically arranged the first payment while simultaneously activating resources he hadn't used since Audrey's case. Surveillance on Keyes revealed the detective was operating alone, motivated by financial concerns following costly medical treatments for his wife. The transaction completed, Dom received confirmation that Harlow's journal and digital files had been destroyed. Whether copies existed remained unknown, another risk to mitigate. The solution crystallized with cold clarity. Keyes would join Harlow and Audrey, another casualty of crossing Dominic Veritas. A convenient accident, a robbery gone wrong. The specifics could be determined by those Dom employed for such scenarios. Yet as Dom prepared to issue the final order, an unexpected interruption occurred. Liam knocked on his office door, holding a laptop. "Dad, do you have a minute? I need help with something." Dom closed his secure messaging app. "Of course, son. What is it?" "It's this history project. We're researching our family backgrounds, and I was hoping you could fill in some gaps about Mom." Dom maintained his composure despite the jolt of adrenaline. "What sort of gaps?" "Basic stuff. Her childhood, how you met, why she—" Liam hesitated. "Why she had mental health issues. My teacher says understanding family medical history is important." Dom gestured for Liam to sit. "What prompted this specific project?" "Just curriculum," Liam shrugged. "But also, I've been having these dreams about Mom lately, like she's trying to tell me something." He looked up, suddenly vulnerable. "Do you think that's weird?" The question pierced Dom's carefully constructed defenses, not because of any supernatural implication, but because it revealed Liam's ongoing need to understand, to connect with the mother Dom had systematically erased. "Dreams are how we process unresolved emotions," Dom explained carefully. "It's natural to wonder about her." "The thing is," Liam continued, "I looked her up online. There wasn't much, but I found articles about her arrest. They said she tried to have you killed." His voice broke slightly. "Is that true?" The moment Dom had anticipated and dreaded for years had arrived. His son, now seeking truth independently, discovering fragments of a story Dom had carefully controlled. "It's complicated, Liam. Your mother became involved with a manipulative man who encouraged her worst impulses. She made terrible choices. But did she really try to kill you?" Liam pressed. Dom faced a crucial decision point. Continue the narrative he'd maintained for years, or offer a more nuanced truth that might preserve Liam's trust when he inevitably discovered more. There was evidence suggesting she and this man, Harlow, discussed harming me, Dom acknowledged. Whether she would have gone through with it, I'll never know for certain. "And she went to prison?" and then killed herself there. Liam's eyes brimmed with tears. Why didn't you tell me the whole truth? I wanted to protect you from knowledge that would only cause pain. But it's my history too, Liam insisted. I deserve to know. The accusation struck with unexpected force. In his determination to control the narrative, to punish Audrey completely, Dom had denied his son agency in understanding his own origin story. You're right, Dom conceded, the words unfamiliar on his tongue. I should have been more forthcoming as you grew older. Liam studied his father, searching for something beyond the admission. There's more, isn't there? Things you're still not telling me. The perceptiveness was distinctly Dom's own. The ability to sense concealed information, to recognize when someone was calculating rather than communicating. In that moment, Dom saw the potential future with devastating clarity. Liam continuing to investigate independently, discovering inconsistencies, perhaps eventually uncovering the truth of Dom's elaborate revenge. The complete loss of trust that would follow would destroy what Dom valued above all else, his relationship with his son. Simultaneously, his phone vibrated with a message from Tobias. Keys operation ready. Awaiting final authorization. Two paths diverged before him. Continue the pattern of ruthless elimination of threats, maintaining absolute control through whatever means necessary. Or break the cycle. Accept vulnerability. Preserve what mattered most through truth rather than manipulation. There is more, Dom acknowledged, making his choice. And you're old enough now to understand it. For the next hour, Dom shared a carefully edited version of events, admitting the affair between Audrey and Harlow, their discussions about harming him, but framing his own actions as standard legal procedures rather than elaborate revenge. He acknowledged using his resources to ensure the strongest possible case against them, but omitted the manufactured evidence and psychological warfare. Your mother made terrible choices, Dom concluded. But she loved you. That was never in question. Liam absorbed this information silently, processing its implications. Did you ever forgive her? The question struck at the core of Dom's character, his fundamental belief that betrayal merited destruction rather than redemption. No, he answered honestly. I didn't. Could you have? Liam pressed. If she had lived, gotten help, changed? Dom considered this hypothetical with genuine reflection. I don't know. Forgiveness isn't natural to me. It isn't weakness, Liam said with unexpected wisdom. My counselor says forgiveness is about freeing yourself, not excusing others. The insight from his teenage son's therapy sessions created an uncomfortable resonance. Had Dom truly freed himself through his perfect revenge? Or had he remained chained to Audrey and Harlow by his determination to orchestrate their destruction long after they posed any genuine threat? After Liam left for bed, Dom returned to the pending authorization for keys. The detective represented a genuine threat to Dom's freedom, to Renata's career, to Liam's understanding of his father. Yet eliminating him would perpetuate the cycle, maintain the pattern that had defined Dom's response to betrayal. A pattern Liam had unknowingly challenged with his simple question about forgiveness. Dom made his decision. Operation canceled. Alternative strategy in progress. The next day, Dom met with his attorneys to draft a different approach. Legal pressure on Keys through documented evidence of extortion, combined with financial incentives for permanent silence that didn't involve murdering a former detective. It wasn't forgiveness. Dominic Veritas remained fundamentally unforgiving toward those who betrayed him. But it was a calculated compromise, accepting control vulnerability to preserve what mattered most. As Christmas approached, Dom found himself reflecting on the events that had begun with frayed Christmas lights 7 years earlier. The complete destruction of Audrey and Harlow had been his finest strategic achievement, a perfect revenge executed with precision and patience. Yet it had come with costs beyond his calculations. The constant vigilance required to maintain the narrative. The corruption of his relationship with Renata. The potential future estrangement from Liam if the full truth ever emerged. On Christmas Eve, Dom and Liam continued their tradition of driving through decorated neighborhoods. As they admired the elaborate displays, Liam turned to his father. Can we visit Mom's grave tomorrow? I've never been. The request represented another crossroads. Continue controlling Liam's connection to his mother, or allow him to develop his own relationship with her memory. If that's what you want, Dom agreed, choosing the latter path. The following morning, after presents and breakfast, they drove to the small cemetery where Audrey had been buried in a simple service attended only by her brother and parents. Dom had ensured Liam's absence, maintaining the narrative of Audrey's mental health facility residency until well after her death. Standing before the modest headstone, Liam placed flowers he had selected himself. "Do you think she can hear us?" "I'm not the right person to ask about the afterlife," Dom replied honestly. "I think she can," Liam decided, "and I think she'd want us both to be happy." The sentiment was childlike in its simplicity, yet profound in its implication. Audrey, whatever her flaws and sins, had ultimately wanted connection with her son, a connection Dom had severed completely as part of his revenge. As they returned home, Dom recognized something had fundamentally shifted. Not forgiveness for Audrey's betrayal, that remained beyond his capacity, but a willingness to allow Liam his own relationship with his mother's memory, unfiltered through Dom's narrative of complete villainy. It wasn't weakness. It was strategic adaptation to protect what mattered most. That evening, as they completed decorating their tree, the tradition that had revealed Audrey's betrayal years before, Dom watched his son hang the star at the top. "Perfect," Dom declared, admiring their work. "Dad," Liam asked, his expression serious beyond his years, "are you happy?" The question caught Dom off guard with its directness. Had his perfect revenge, his complete victory, brought happiness? Or had it simply eliminated threats while creating new vulnerabilities? "I have everything that matters," Dom answered carefully. "A successful business, a remarkable son, security. That's not the same as happiness," Liam observed with unsettling perception. Dom considered this distinction. "Perhaps not, but it's enough." As Christmas night deepened around them, Dominic Veritas acknowledged the true price of his victory, the capacity for simple happiness his revenge had consumed, the ability to trust completely, to connect without calculation, to forgive rather than destroy. He remained unrepentant about Audrey and Harlow's fates. They had earned their destruction through their betrayal. But as he watched his son, unburdened by the weight of perpetual vengeance, Dom recognized